Yes.
Thank you, sir, for joining this orientation program for the AWSAR participants. So, just for your small brief, that these are the shortlisted candidate out of more than 4,000 entries which we received. Out of that, the 300 has been selected, and this is again like to reorient them to further brush up their stories in a popular format. So this orientation program is for that. So you're welcome, sir, and we invite you for your opening remark about the.
Very good morning. Thank you, Dr. Tyagi. Thank you, Dr. Kollegala Sharma, Dr. Bharat Bhushan, and everybody out here. And first of all, my apologies for being late. We had some technical glitch in trying to be there in this webinar. Now that we have gotten started, I wish all of you our very best and really want to congratulate you from the core of my heart for having gotten to this point in a huge competition where more than 4,000 entries have been received. So congratulations once again. And since we all know that the best would win, and there is going to be a review, there's going to be a presentation, there's going to be an entire session where subject matter experts would sit together, talk about it, and take it forward from here. Having said this, the most important thing at this moment is now that you've already written your story, you understand what you are trying to say and what you want the people on the street know about what you have done. So in order to make it sure, here are, I'm sure, our panelists, Dr. Kollegala Sharma ji, Dr. B.K. Tyagi, who are veterans in this area, would help you understand how best you can perform, how best you need to do, and what needs to be done at the time when the interview or the so-called review is going to happen in few weeks from now. While this all happens, here is my crux. See, the most important thing when I entered about 35 years ago in this domain of science communication, popularization, and its extension, which we called as scope, we've been very clear that the first important thing is when you communicate with anybody, you do it in a language that he or she understands. So our panelists, our review people who will be there to help and support you would understand, know, and there are two languages that we are very happy to talk and take you forward. One is Hindi and other is English. So whichever language that you think you are very comfortable, you should be able to produce, and you should be able to speak, and you should be able to convince the people who are going to sit in the review panel. And once you've broken the first barrier of communication through language, your body language should be very clear, as if you're trying to make anybody on a street understand the nuances of what you're doing in your labs or your research work that you have chosen for this AWSAR competition. It all talks about how to. Tyagi ji, you want to say something? You called me. Anyway, so so the second most important thing is when you present, you should be very pleasant. You should be at ease. You should be very calm. You should not feel as if you are in any reality show where you're trying to impress upon the people who are there to review your work. You're there to make them understand, feel comfortable. So in a way that you were as if you are going to tell your work to any commoner on the street. And while you do so, make sure that the kind of words that you choose, the kind of message that you want to say is very loud and clear. So normally what happens is you must have read newspapers, you would have read new articles. The very first paragraph of an article or a very first paragraph of your speech should be something which should be an executive sort of a summary of what you're going to tell, so that you not only attract but give a sense of what you're going to do in that first few minutes or first few seconds of your speech. And this is exactly now more relevant in times when the attention period has reduced because of our so-called social media and handheld devices. So my request would be to make sure that while you speak, while you present your case, you should first be very clear, very upright, very your concept should be very clear, and you should give out that piece of executive summary to the reviewers, because the kind of reviewers that would be sitting to judge your work would be subject matter experts, would be science communicators, would be journalists, would there would be a complete um, uh, a view of all kinds of people that would be associated in science communication for a long time. So having said this, you would you should be ready to face a number of questions from these panelists. Having said this, you should be ready to face a number of questions from these people who are going to interview you. So please prepare yourself. Please do your homework in a much stronger and a much solid manner, because you might have questions for all kinds of sides that might come to you. So keep in mind what a normal common person would ask you when you are going to make your presentation. In order to do so, please ensure that the kind of whatever small PowerPoint presentation that you make should be complete, should have details of information, should have information which is very interesting and related to it. Anything which is not related to what you're trying to do or the domain that you're talking about would incur a lot of other questions, and there might be a thought process that all that you're trying to do is very unconcatenated. So ensure that it all is duly done. I know there's lot much to be said, but I once again want to congratulate you, because our two experts, subject matter experts, Dr. B.K. Tyagi and Dr. Kollegala Sharma, are science communicators par excellence and have been there for a long time, and they do understand the nuances very well and will certainly help you. So in this particular review section, please ensure please ensure that your queries are all questions are good questions, but ensure that your queries are to the point, because time is limited and the bandwidth that these two panelists have is also very limited. So please look into, if a question has already been asked, don't try to ask that question again. Or if you have, you can write it in the chat box, ask for a solution to it. So having said this, without taking much of your time and without coming between the two panelists, I would once again congratulate all of you, and I wish you, may the best person take away the trophy from here and uh, get into this whole vogue of that. What we're trying to do is to create an effective and a very strong science communicator that is hidden within you. Once again, from the entire team of AWSAR, DST, Vigyan Prasar, and all others who have joined this entire exercise for the entire year, may I once again congratulate you, wish you all the best, and we've just gotten into a new year, wishing you a very, very happy new year, so that the coming times would make your efforts into science communication a strong bit from your side, because it is all about what that we're trying to do is all about something which is called scientific social responsibility, which is already spoken at different levels, at different points and different workshops that we have had done earlier as well. Once again, thank you and wish you all the best. Jai Hind and Jai Bharat.
त्यागी सर अनम्यूट कर लीजिए.
Thank you, sir, for your very important, valuable inputs and a total insight about the program. And I think it will go a long way and helping the participants when they will improve, their write-up to make it more, into on the line of popular science writing aspect. So thank you once again, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And now I switch over to Dr. Kollegala Sharma. I think he need no introduction. He has been with us in many previous such webinars, and he is well known for his work. And I think I shouldn't give much of his record in writing, because it will, the entire workshop, the period will be consumed in that only. So without much delay, I invite Kollegala Sharma ji for his talk or the queries which the participant has on this webinar. So welcome, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Namaskar, Tyagi ji and Dr. Nakul. Thank you very much for inviting me for this interaction. And as such, I would love to have more of an interaction with the audience here, mainly because the first level of writing has already happened. So that means we do understand what is required of AWSAR program. To remind you again, let me just say the guidelines used for evaluating the scripts that come for the AWSAR program. Okay. One of the, am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir,
Yes,
you are
sir.
audible.
Okay.
You are
Okay.
audible.
Right. So the first thing is each essay is evaluated based on 4 criteria. The one is the language, the content, the format and presentation. These are the 3 criteria that we use. And then in general, what the impression the essay creates, for that also we have a specific evaluation. Okay, when it comes to language, there are 3 criteria that we look for. One is the language of the article should be simple. What does that mean? And that is the question that we need to answer. Simple, appropriate words and short sentences and paragraphs. Of course,
Vema?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes,
The
sir.
screen is okay. I think he will join. He will rejoin. Dr. Kollegala will rejoin. While Dr. Kollegala Sharma is rejoining, I will take up some queries. I have already answered that the recorded version will be mailed to the participant. Another query.
yeah,
Can
I'm
I?
back. Yeah,
Ah, great, great.
okay.
Over to you,
Um,
sir.
okay, I am back here. So I am reading out a title that I found on the AWSAR scripts. Autophagy, a novel therapeutic intervention in ischemic stroke, a revolutionary mechanism to therapy. Now, uh, there are several things in this. When we write about the title, like Dr. Nakulji said, the first thing that we need to do when we want to speak to someone is to engage him. Engage him in the sense the readers are to be attracted about the story. Okay, story what you are going to tell. I will come to you about what is story and what is storytelling. Uh, if the reader is not interested in the topic that you are presenting him, definitely he is not going to read further. So the title is one of the important things that we need. It is like what we dress, how we dress. And sometimes a very neat and clean dress is enough. Sometimes you will have to have a special formal dress also. But then too much of formality will be very, will put off the audience. And what you need to do is you should mingle with the audience, which means the language that you need to title. When we say autophagy, what does autophagy mean? It's a concept that we scientists create to talk to our peer groups. So therefore, the language is only for the scientists, not for communication between a scientist and someone else. And therefore, we need to look at these kind of words. When we say appropriate words, these technical and jargon words should be as less as possible. Sometimes, yes, there is no other go that you will have to use a definite word, and that is absolutely essential. in that case, you use that word, but you will also explain that why, what does that word mean. But it is not necessary that all that we use in our scientific or within the labs, the words and the language that we use within the labs have to be there. For example, autophagy. So autophagy generally refers to something that eats itself. Okay, so it's a word and a concept that we use when a particular organ system kills a part of itself. Okay, and this is one of the things. The second thing in this sentence, a novel therapeutic intervention in ischemic stroke. Of course, stroke is a disease that we know. What is ischemic stroke? The moment a reader reads this, he will have a doubt. What is ischemic stroke? And a writer's responsibility is to make him understand. If that is the case, then this particular word has to be clearly explained. Or you can also say in one type of stroke. It is not necessary that you have to educate the reader and make him a doctor or a researcher or anything. What we are trying to do whenever we write something is that we give a gist of what we are doing in the research, not that we want to make all our readers as biologists or a researcher. So that is not the purpose. So therefore, it is essential that we reduce these jargons and technical words wherever it is possible. Okay, and secondly, so therefore, ischemic stroke is not required. We can always say that in a type of stroke, and therapeutic intervention. Why do we use this word therapeutic intervention? This is a usage of language in the technical circles among the scientists. So it is not necessary that we use the same language elsewhere. So although therapy is a word that is used in English, although intervention is a word that is used, when you put them together, they give a different difficult connotation. So can we say something that in curing, in treating, and these are the words that if we use, they are simple and they are to the point, and they also attract the audience. It's not the intention of our writing is not just to attract the audience. The intention is to communicate, and the communication happens only when we speak in the language that the reader or our audience knows. And how do we go to that? Very simple. The language that we use in our routine life is not the one that we use in the lab. And I will never say that I want to go to a doctor for a therapeutic intervention. I will always say that, yes, I want to go for a therapy at the most, or I would say that I want to get a cure. So when that is the language we use, why do we want to use something that is different? That's one. Okay, and secondly, there are sometimes in science also we will have a lot of redundancies, or what we call as euphemisms, things which are not necessary there. Here again in this title, I'm taking this title as an example mainly because this gives a lot of points that we can discuss. A revolutionary mechanism to therapy. Now, what does that mean? A revolutionary mechanism? Didn't we have any therapy earlier? And does it change everything overnight? No, this is euphemism, exaggeration. We say that scientific language is precise, is to the point, and is factual. But please remember that when we talk among ourselves, among the scientists, we also exaggerate. This is one of the examples of that. And if we can reduce these kind of things, these sentences can be simpler, shorter, and easily understandable. So what do we mean by simple language? When we say simple language, it is the language that every one of us uses, whether you're speaking in Hindi, whether you're writing in Hindi or English. The language has to be simple, and the language has to be the one which everyone uses. So the same kind of mistakes we can also do in Hindi, where we use very literary kind of flowery language that generally we don't use in our routine life. And therefore, the first criteria that we look at in any AWSAR script or in any popular science story is that it makes things very clear in a simple language that all of us are familiar with and all of us use in our everyday life. And that is the criteria that we look at. It's not how much we know or how much you know, it is how good you tell what you know is the question. Okay, the communication is all about how good you tell what you know or what you understand. That's one. Secondly, this is one query that I saw here. What could be a good conclusion to any research story? Tyagi Saab, do you have anything to add to what I said just now?
See, whenever like in conclusion, because one aspect is that it is a social scientist responsibility and science communication. When we talk about science communication per se, it has a 3 dimension. Social dimension is there. You means like you are not only giving information to your peers group, but also to the society. So what is the significance of your research to the society? It may have a economic dimension as well, because you may come out with some product which can be commercialized, or the basic knowledge is such which has a potential to be, giving a altogether a new dimension into the industry. And also political also, because here I would like to give the example of the recent corona vaccine. On a political line, you see in India we had a divide of whether we should go for vaccination or not. So these kinds of science is to verify research from the angle of what is the social, political, economic, and even a diplomatic dimension to that. So in the conclusion, you should not give only about your finding, but its implication to the society in general as well. Yeah.
I will add to this. So any research or innovations can be of 2 types. One is incremental. So you will have only a small improvement over what has happened, and there can be some innovations which are totally new. So both of them will have different kind of impact on the readership. So when it is incremental, it is absolutely necessary for us to say that it is incremental and point out that it is only an improvement over what is known earlier. So the what is known earlier could be an understanding. Okay, it could be a basic research which changes a little bit of your understanding, like in case of autophagy, the title that I read there. So the ischemic stroke can be cured with interventions like autophagy, inducing autophagy and things like that. So that's only an improvement. There have been already a cure for this particular disease. This is a different kind of approach. So that point has to be very clear. And secondly, this is with regard to fundamental research. That's the point. And if there is an improvement, say, let's say we have a smartphone, there is a new development, and the development could be in the chip, could be in the way the software is working, could be in the way something else. But then ultimately, what does it do? How does it help the user? So this is the question. So that point also has to be there as a conclusion. And then in addition, there can be certain things like Dr. Tyagi said, which have impact on the society. How does it affect the society? Let's say he gave an example of vaccine. Let's also take the example of recently the judgment that happened in US on abortion. Now, what will be the significance of this? How do we understand it, based on science that we know? So these also can be a part of this. So if you are working on a specific aspect, how does it affect the society? That part becomes one of the important things. Then lastly, can there be definitive conclusions? Generally, the science or the conclusions that we find in research papers are not definitive conclusions. They say that this is what we have found and there is a scope for further research. And you look at any of the research papers, the conclusions ultimately mean that this is not the end point. There is some other research that has to be done. And that means there is no definitive conclusion in any of the fundamental research stories. So how do we, as science writers, do this? So we need to tell that this is a specific improvement over our previous understanding, and that point has to be important. One more thing that I have observed in evaluating these scripts is that people start telling their own stories. So the general impression among the people is that, I don't know whether that is because some of the earlier AWSAR stories that got prized were written in that way, in first person, and therefore people think that that's a style that attracts a lot of people, but that is not the case. A story, when we say a story, there are two aspects of that. In a journalism parlance, a story is anything that is published in a newspaper. That's a story. Okay. So a journalist usually goes out, then looks for information, collects all those things and puts together in a write-up in any of the formats, and that is called a story. There is also another aspect of this, storytelling. So storytelling has to be one of the important aspects of communication. Whether you're talking of sociology, whether you're telling a literature story, or whether you're telling a science aspect. So all of this, if they can form a story, then it will attract the readership. So what is a story? What are the characters? Generally, a story is simple and it should create a bond between the author and the reader. So it is not necessary that when somebody says that you write a story, I start, I am Kollegala Sharma, I come from this village, I do this and all this thing. No, that's boring. So instead, if we can say something that is very dear to the audience, okay, let's say, the people in Uttarakhand, right, so maybe right now are experiencing a severe cold, and we start with that and use those kind of analogies in our write-up. Okay, what happens is that even if your writing is not like the story type, it attracts attention. It attracts attention because it creates or induces an emotion, an emotional bonding with the writing. And that is what we call as a story. It is not necessary that we write एक राजा था, एक रानी थी और उनको एक बेटी थी और वो बेटी बहुत सुंदर थी. This is not just the story. So all stories need not start like that. It could simply be that I went to canteen and ate a dosa. I went to canteen and had a parota. That can be a simple statement, but with the statement, we can also add other things which make that a story. I went to a canteen, ate a parota that looked like an expanding universe. Okay, so these are the secondly, in any science stories, we look at certain things because the science concepts are always not readily sensed by all our sense organs. So we cannot see some of these concepts, we cannot feel, we cannot touch, we cannot smell also. So these senses have to be made aware of the concept. How do we do that? So we use what are called as analogies. And the tools like analogies, similes, or other metaphors. These kind of things are used in the story, and this also forms part of storytelling. How do you bring an analogy in your sentence? How do you make that a part of the understanding is very important, and that becomes very much important. It's secondly, the language that you use is very important. Let me just give one example. Recently, Indian Institute of Science engineers, this is one of my favorite story because this happened, and brought out one invention on a diabetic you know uh, shoes. So essentially they used a 3D printing to prepare the insoles of the shoes, whereas the press release that gave this information only said that they had used 3D printing and tested the shoe, and that was the end of it. This story was published as a story, as a news item in an English newspaper. And I translated that and sent it to the Kannada newspaper, because that's what we do from Kutuhali many times. That's the scope program. And the Kannada newspaper also published it. Meanwhile, another Kannada newspaper asked me, can you do a write-up on this? Okay, so I prepared a feature and a news story is different. A news story will only say that this has happened, whereas a feature will also give details about the happening. Okay, now a diabetic, the news will only say that a 3D printing technology has been used to prepare a new type of diabetic slippers or diabetic shoes, whereas a feature will add to that. It will say not only this, but it will also say what are diabetic slippers, what are diabetic shoes, why do we need that, how much will it cost, where do you get it, how do people use it, and what are the problems associated with that, and are there any other solutions beyond that, and what is this new solution that we have, and how does it differ from the other one. So all these details will come into the feature, whereas in the same information will also be available in a news story, in a news, in a very brief manner. Now, when this feature was sent, the feature was published in Kannada, and surprisingly, the Indian Institute of Science scientists started getting a lot of calls because of that. The impact was because of two things. One is the language. The second one is that we try to explain what does this mean and how easy it is to use 3D printing today to prepare the insoles rather than the other technologies that were there. So this is the kind of impact a good story makes. A story has to attract not only the attention, but also engage the audience so that they feel that this is happening among themselves, and that is storytelling. So if you have any further questions, please send it through this. There is one more question which says how to present and enhance figures or any sort of simplified diagrams in the story. Now, why do we use figures or diagrams in a story? There are several reasons why we use diagrams. One, if I am publishing a magazine, I use pictures only to break the text. Okay, if you look at the research papers, many of the research publications, there is only text, nothing else. And the variation can be in the size of the fonts, or maybe in the subheadings and other things like that. Whereas in a magazine looks attractive mainly because there are other pictures that add to that. There can be a simple sunset picture when you are talking about a solar eclipse. Sunset doesn't give you any information about solar eclipse, but it is there because it gives you a relief, what we call as a visual relief, instead of a plain text. Secondly, in the solar eclipse story itself, if you are using a line diagram to show how the moon comes between the sun and the earth, then that becomes an illustrative figure, illustrative illustration. Okay, that is because that's a concept that we understand that is there in the story, but for many people visualizing how moon comes in between the two will be difficult. So to explain that concept, we use another story. So there are different purposes for illustrations in that. And there can be also one graph, okay, which shows how over the period the solar eclipse moves across the globe. And what does that mean? It shows in one simple diagram for a person who wants to know where all this solar eclipse can appear on the globe. In one simple diagram, the entire thing can be shown. So a lot of data put together and visualized easily is another part of this. So most of the graphs that you use are like that. And the graphs show either the trend or the volume change between the different things. So you can always explain that. And secondly, when we do this, exact numbers are not the important thing for understanding relation between different volumes. Say, for example, if I say 10 to the power of 10, it makes no sense. Whereas if I say 10 and trillion, compare them, it will be easier. But then the comparison can also be like a simile. Okay, I can say that if you say it is a 1 grain of sand to a beach full of sand, then the volume, the difference between the volume is easily comprehensible. So this is in terms of using mathematics and statistics, we need to be very careful about using comparisons. The mere numbers will not attract. Numbers are important, but that will not attract. For good comprehension, you need to compare them. And you can use similes or other things. Let's say, for example, when we use proportions. So 10 and 100, how do you compare? 10 is 10 times 100. That's fine. And 100 and 10 is 1/10 of 100. Both can be used. Both can be used. But the 1/10 or 10 times may not be very comprehensible. If you use an example, say a measure, a 10 ml and a 90 ml, maybe that will be very easily understandable to the person. So you need to understand what kind of these numerical or mathematical or other things are used. Okay, then cartoons or other type of pictures that we use, they are generally reliefs, visual reliefs, and sometimes they add to this, like I said, illustrative examples, especially these days in case of molecular biology or in chemistry, we use a lot of these cartoons to make the concept of bonding, concept of three-dimensional structures very clear to the audience. Please note that whatever the three-dimensional structure or these things are there, they may not be the same in the molecular level, but we use that as a understanding of how these molecules work. And therefore, when we talk about illustrations, appropriate illustration is important. If you have a very difficult topic talking about, use an illustration that simplifies the the concept. Take, for example, in case of fabrication of electronic chips, there are many methods that we use. One can be simple etching. Etching is like you write on a let me just say a clay tablet. Okay, you use a nail and write on a clay tablet. So that's one sort of etching. See, other one is vapor deposition. So that is something like on a glass, the water vapor condenses and then stops. But if you write something on that, the water vapor condenses only on certain parts and not on others. So that's the kind of technology that we use in vapor deposition. Or you can put layers together one above the other. So these are different types of technologies, and we should visualize them and then try to explain them in the same manner. So I think the pictures and figures that we use should add or complement the text that is there. It is not just repeating. Okay. And secondly, if we can have a very good these days visualization is easier. Earlier we had to simply stop with graphs and all, but now these days the graphic art is coming up, where you can present very huge data in a very simplest manner, and those things will give a lot of clarity in addition to what you say in the text. So illustrations are very important. Tyagi ji. Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you, sir.
I think there are 2-3 aspects which you have highlighted. One is like when we are saying your own story, that doesn't mean your personal story. It is the story of your research, not your own story, because this has in many of those story which we have received, this mistake has been committed. And also the format, generally we have seen like most of the format, storytelling format has been used in a dialogic form.
Yeah.
So, but that is not, many times we found the research is not as which could be communicated by dialogic form. Here you have to write an article, you have to write a feature, what Kollegala has said. So because I know we as a sample story we have given on our website, and coincidentally many of them were in a dialogic form. So many of our participants presume that this is the only format. No, it is not. You can write that. That's why, like many times, our stories has curtailed the imagination of our participant. So don't go whatever is given you as a sample. This was just one, and it was most appropriate in that for that research only. It may not be very appropriate or totally ideal for the kind of research which you are doing. So you have to see in what format, because the selection of the format for telling your story is equally important. It's not like you're copying it from somewhere because those has been already awarded. It's not necessary that the same will be applicable in your story. So you have to look at in what way, in a best way, in a simple way, you can communicate your story, and accordingly you decide the format. And also about the illustration, I have seen in many of the illustration which has been given in the story is about about the process or the mechanism in which a particular thing is working. So it is not those kinds of illustrations are when we are writing a textbook chapter, then it has a utility. But when we are writing it in a popular format for a common man, what kind of mechanism, interventions, or process involved may not be necessary. It depends if the process itself is a new finding, then only it's okay. Otherwise, those kinds of things, how a particular suppose a molecule is working in a cell, and giving that total step by step as illustration is not necessary, because reader is not interested how this mechanism, they are interested in what is done and what is the outcome. So try to keep the track, keeping in mind the mindset of your audience, what he want to know, and also the objective in which you are conveying. You're conveying them that they should know that information which you have, which is your finding, and also they should be able to connect with that in such a way. So your story has a complete, packaging in such a way where you involve the reader in itself in the first, in the beginning itself. Yeah, Kollegalji.
Yeah, that was a,
Yeah.
good point. And a dialogue format. Yeah, that is another aspect that most of the AWSAR stories use.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
dialogue is fine when we have a good, amenable story. Now, if I say that a chip starts talking about itself, that sounds very, very strange. Okay, dialogue is good when we have a animated subject. Could be a people, could be about a medical story, or could be about an animal. That will be fine. But an inanimate object like a chip, if it is used in a dialogue, in a first person, it starts telling its story, it becomes very difficult for people to understand. Second thing is, when we start using this, even then, okay, let's say that we have one, an imagery is formed. We say that a sun is a ball. That imagery should be carried throughout the story. At one point the sun becomes a ball, and at another point, to make it simple, because you are not able to explain something there, and you make it a square, doesn't make sense. So this is another problem that we have found a story. When you think of an analogy, you have to think of it in such a way that throughout your from the beginning to end, that analogy is carried, so that it threads through the story. It joins together all the concepts that you want to tell and makes it easily understandable to the audience. If you use one imagery in one place and another imagery at another place, it will be very difficult. Imagery means you compare something to something that we all know. It's like a simile or something like that. And that is something I find in a lot of Ausar stories. Somewhere it starts with one analogy and then goes to something else. So the reader gets confused. So you have to look at this point in your story. It might be reading very good with English and all, but the imagery could be wrong. So you please check that and do that. And there's one more question here. Can we give simple graphics? I have already answered that question. The graphics or pictures serve several purposes in a story. If you cannot explain something in words, and if a illustration can help you to tell that in an easy manner, please use that. But generally in a popular science article, that kind of a thing is not used. As far as possible, we simplify things. And secondly, do we have to use graphic software to draw this? See, the illustration can be anything. Illustration can be a simple, very simple drawing. I hope you have seen Richard Feynman's diagrams. They are known as Feynman diagrams only. They are only arrows and a curvy wave line, just one line. Okay, and those were used to convey very difficult concept of interaction between different types of fundamental particles. And that is the strength of a good graphic that we have. So the ones which we cannot explain very clearly in words or in any other manner, the graphics will come to your help. You can do the graphic. If you are a good artist, do it. And if you have time, do in a good painting. It doesn't matter. It is not necessary that you use always a graphical software. But remember, if your story has to be published, if you are sending it to a publication, if you are sending it to a newspaper to publish, then the graphic has to be in such a manner that it is printable. and that is what we call a sprint format. Okay, and there are certain criteria for that, like the use of colors and all these things. Those are difficult details right now, that is not required. Then yes, you can draw by hand, you can use graphic software, you can use Excel to draw your graphs and all these things. That is not the criteria. What is important is that how good is that drawing in adding comprehension or in explaining your concepts to your reader.
Yeah. Okay. Kollegalji, there is a one the question is say like how many keywords should be there in a story writing. I think there is no question of you are still in the mold of writing an abstract, and then where you have to write the keyword. There is no requirement for the keywords. In fact, the keywords are not to be used. In fact, those such terminology, such words, such English should be used, which is comprehensible to the common man. So there is no need for, it's not required actually.
It's not required.
And you can give as for the image, you can give up to 2 to 3, but those images should not be again of your lab or the experiment which you are conducting, because it will not adding anything. The images, illustrations, or the infographics should be adding, but they should be complementary to your story. It should not be in an isolation, or then you need to give an explanation to that illustration itself. Then it will reduce the readability of your article. So it may be in a like the example what Kollegalji has given, this Feynman illustrations. So they were not directly, connected with the in a text. It was somewhere, but anyway, it has some relationship with the finding or with the research. So here also that imagination is required. It should not be that direct. I think I'll have few illustration. I'll come to that. So in that case, it is necessary that you should work separately on your illustrations or pictures. One question is, can we give the name of our lab in our story? So because then you are disclosing your identity, and we have already a rule that your identity should not be disclosed. So because we have all the data, and we want to read that story independently, without your affiliation to any lab and all that. Okay, because this lab is in India, and this is the research of from Indian lab. So idea is that, so it's not necessary. It's not necessary that you should give, or the picture of the experiments or the lab inside. Those are not illustration. That will not be the complementary to your research story, because it will be more of a self glorification kind of thing. So that is not required. You are unnecessary. You are taking an extra space, or reducing or increasing the word. So that's not required. It's not required. Okay.
Yep.
So
Yes,
in
Tyagi ji, you are
addition,
correct.
Mr. is permitted to present picture of your research in the story to better show your result, like a new product or a machine developed. No, I think lab should, inside lab working condition should not be given, because it will not serve the purpose. It will not serve the purpose. So permitted if your research in a story better should. Okay. So I think, sir, is there any add which you can add to the, or
Okay, when it comes to technical words, how many technical words we should use? As far as possible, without technical words, if you can do, that will be fantastic. And I would suggest you please read G. Venkatraman's books on physics, which was published by Universities Press, Hyderabad. And they have this quality, and he explains in the beginning itself why he has used a different format there. And it's a book where the boxes are separate from the regular text. So the boxes that he uses gives you technical information and other complementary information. They are almost like illustrations, whereas the original text doesn't have much of the the formulae or calculations or technical words. And one of the things that you find in science textbooks or science books, popular science books, is that at the end there will be a glossary. The glossary gives you the number of technical words that are used, which need some sort of an explanation. If a book has most of the glossary, then it is not a popular science. So generally, what we do is we reduce as much of technical words as possible when we write for the general public, because it is not our intention to tell them about the science or teach them about science. It is generally to tell them about what is the new understanding. There are two aspects to science. One is that science, understanding the science or understanding about the science. The other one is, what does the science give us the new knowledge? Okay, the new knowledge can be explained in the simplest of terms. Okay, if Newton discovered gravity and said that there is a gravitational force, it is not necessary for us to tell people that Newton discovered gravitational force. We can always tell people that Newton discovered that two bodies attract each other, and depending upon their size, the attraction differs. Now, have I changed anything? No. But if I am talking to a student, then probably I will tell him that the gravitational force is the attractive force between the two, and that changes according to the mass. Because a student understands what a mass is, and a student needs to actually measure these things. So therefore, I use that there. So in essence, when we talk about the same story to a student and to a common man, there is a difference that we can use. For a common man, or for people who are not in the science field, or who are not your peer group, when you talk about your subject, it is better to reduce as many technical words as possible. If you can do without any technical word, that is the greatest thing that you can do. Can you use any technical word for a student, for fourth standard or third standard student? It will be very difficult, extremely difficult. So for those kids, you need to be extremely creative, where you have to create imagination in them. At the same time, the concepts have to be pretty clear. And so their technical words don't have much of a use. So please remember, technical words are good to use among the peer group, and with anybody else, avoid them.
Yeah. But there are many words now, scientific technical word, which has been already integrated into our common language. So we generally presume for our AWSAR thing from our participants.
Up to 10th standard.
Yeah. Like the textbook of science up to 10th standard, whatever the technical word they use, we presume that it's all a part of public memory, and that can be used, like nucleus, and definitely gravity is also there. So the benchmark is up to, you can see, the 10th class textbook of science. So whatever the terminology has been given, and if you think you can further explain it by some analogy, or by giving some example also. So that depend actually to what extent. There is no hard and fast rule. Only the overall objective is to make your content readable, enjoyable, and engaging. And how you can do that? As much as you can simplify it with the interesting anecdotes, with interesting analogies, so, and which enhances, or which help to imagine what you're talking about. So it's like that. It's like that. So for science writing, generally it is always among my peers group, we always say there is no hard and fast rule for writing on any scientific subject. There is no specific format. It depends as the things comes, and it's always a constant, search. So this is the subject, and in what best way it can be communicated, whether it should be in the form of a story by a journalist or an article, but not a textbook chapter, and it may be in a feature, or it may be a combined of all of that. That again depend on the subject, and how much the word limit you have with you. So here, like we have already given you a word limit, so you have to explain everything within that, and it's not necessary that you should consume the entire word limit which has been given to you. It may be less, you can, because I have seen in many articles, the point or the research component has been already well explained, but just to consume that word limit, they have added something which we found is not necessary. So it's not necessary that you are using the entire word limit. You can, if you are able to communicate in 1,000 words, you're most welcome. It's the word limit is not the criteria for any like it is not into the any evaluation parameters. So you can use the less words also. That's okay. Yeah.
So is the format, whichever format you want that
Yes.
can be used, but keep in mind that whatever format is used, it should not appear strange. Okay, the moment anything appears strange, the reader is put off. So that's one thing. What format can we use? If you have read Discovery of India by Pandit Nehru, you will understand that he wrote letters, and a good part of that also contains science, and therefore any format can be used. You can also explore if a love letter to explain your research. Why not? So the format is not the criteria. What we need to understand is how good we explain the things. That is more important. And when we say how good we explain, three things. One, the reader should understand what you're talking about. So therefore, the language, the way that is put in is important. Second, if there is a very difficult concept which a reader is not familiar with, then you will have to use tools of science communication or tools of communication, which is analogy, simile, or an experimental explanation or anything like this to explain. And that is the one. And the third thing is a setting. Setting is it cannot be something in mass. It has to happen here. So if you can bring in something that is happening around you into the story, that will be very, very engaging.
Okay. So, Kollegala, I have a small presentation just to give, what are our observation about when we were evaluating the things, and they should avoid those whenever they have to resubmit their story again. You should not do that, because that is unnecessary. Because now the competition is between 300 people, and so you have to show your merit in now in your revised story. So I'll go on a I'm sharing my screen. uh, uh, so is it visible now? Okay. So these are some observation which we found. These are some generalization only, around depending upon 175 article which last 3 years or this year also we have evaluated. I have evaluated. So interestingly, if the research is a field-based research, the article is generally written in a popular style and very comprehensible to an ordinary reader. But when it comes to a pure research, and most of the story, the significant portion of the story is in the description of the research problem, methodology, approach to the study, which is highly with the high technical details. Okay. okay, and a lot of terminology, technical terminology. And in such cases, the title is same as their research problem, because working on a title is very, very important, because that is the, first impression is the last impression. So first is your title should be such that most of you have to revise your title, because I have seen whatever is written in your synopsis as your title of the research, or in your progress report, or in your abstract, same has been given here in many cases. So avoid that. And most of the story are written in first person. I think we have already explained that. And the word tell your story has been misunderstood. The story is more of a self glorification rather than the research of the participant, research of our person. And many story, the significant portion is about the secondary data, means something which is already known, or the information, and the original research component is very minimal, which in fact should be the major highlight of the for your story. So this drawback we have also found in many story. Despite the write-up is good, very engrossing, engaging, but the original research, the new research, no doubt, as Kollegala has said, it may be an incremental value, but that is the major highlight of your research. And in many story, the original RNA component is missing, especially because where the research is not yet mature enough to arriving at a finding. This has happened in such story where the researcher, the research period is like researchers in the beginning of his first year or first and half year. And most of the stories are written in an essay format. That is a very, very and it looked like a chapter of a textbook. So if you read yourself, because before submitting a story, give it to your your friends who is not your peers, from your peers group, okay, and to your mother, father, your other near and dear friends and all that, and take their feedback whether they are able to understand what exactly you are doing. And the many stories, the start is very good, but lost into the technical jargon again very soon, describing the methodology, the experiments, and the equipment, etc., etc. So the reader, lost interest. The start is good, even title is sometimes very good, but again the as this the in second or third para you go, the reader totally lost the interest because of that is not comprehensible to him. And the stories on the core R&D, in such case the social connection are missing without background or the forward move, as I told you, because you have to give the social, political, economic, and international dimension to your story. Otherwise, uh, that connect, that emotional connect with with the reader will not be there. Why should I read that if it's not of interest to me, or there is no effort on the part of writer to get me connected with your findings. Okay. So in many cases, the title of the story is same as given the research problem, because you have to really work hard on that. And the stories are fascinating, but yet to mature yet, because research is not, it has not reached on any conclusive finding. But in such cases also, whatever you have done, you can may give a hypothetical conclusion that if the result, or if the trends are such, if the trends are confirmed, it may leads to that. So we have to wait for, we have to uh, take to the final end of that research. So something like that note or somewhere component, but the articulation is not up to the mark to make reading a pleasure, despite interesting finding and the social connect. So here, what was missing, the craftsmanship of writer, that was missing in our scholar. Everything was good, but the way the story was drafted, the crafted, it wasn't very good in the sense when we, because in any story, what the evaluator is looking is your original finding and how you have communicated in a popular way. So these are the two things which we are looking in you. So here the R&D component was good, social connect was good, but the writing skill of a popular writer was not up to the mark. So it made the reading, bit hazy, or not a uh, a good experience. So in some cases, the story appeared to be the introduction of the thesis. I mean, that's why, like, not much work sometime has been done by the writer, and more space is given in many story of describing objective methodology and other technical detail, which is unnecessary uh, concerning the context. Okay, so this we have to, and many story with good content turn out to be semi-technical. That because we are sending stories to two people, one to the subject expert and other to the science writer, who himself is a means have a good understanding of science in general, and maybe of a specific subject as well. So in such cases, we found that we could understand the research was good, but the effort to make it, to convey the research at a popular level, that was missing. So the some story was only a state of art paper, research finding are totally missing. That was another group of papers we find. And in many stories, it mainly the elaboration of experiment conducted, research design methodology, or the result of the experiment itself. It doesn't so because I'm not interested only in what kind of methodology approach or research design has been used, or the data of your experiment. What is the meaning of that data, and how it will be of use, of any useful to me? I think that is more important. And for that, I think we need to first develop a format in our mind, so that and what, then in what way it has to be conveyed. You discuss with the and not your peers, with your friends, so that this is the way my research is and then try to first write them into the bullet and then expand on that. So no, like, we are talking about the technical words. Now look at this picture. uh, Water, somewhere the water, because we know H2 is a water, and if we write, H2O is only 50 meter away, but the common man cannot comprehend it. For him, water. So this is the like you can understand the significance of not using technical word, equations, abbreviations in any popular article. So it will confuse your reader. He will not, or he or she will not will not be able to comprehend what exactly you are talking about. So same, I think I have shared this thing, like if you, a journalist is coming to a writer and he asking you what is the breakthrough of your research, and he wrote this equation, that make no sense to him. And also, if they have to write a story about this based on that, I think they cannot be true. And no, we know the science communication is presenting science related topic to non-expert, and even your peers may be able to understand. But even in the science itself, like I am from the science, biological sciences, but I have no idea about the physical sciences, or especially the new emerging field of science. I don't know much about the computer, much about the electronics, much about the nanotechnology. And for them also, I am also a non-expert, even despite that I have a scientific basis or degree in that. But for new subject, it is, I'm also a non-expert. So for me also, even using that technical word from that discipline will make no sense. If you write a plasma, being a life scientist, for plasma, maybe in the blood, not the fourth state of matter. So this is the way, like that's why that clarification is required, because science is now becoming so specialized, so many branches of that. So any person from outside that branch may be an unknown expert. So how we can convey that thing to him? And so communicating science to non-expert, communication of science to a non-expert, that is a science communication. And you know already the objective, and your, as I told you, the dimension which, or you have to see the purpose of that, because that should also be reflected. That should also be a part of your article, that by reading that, all people should feel enthusiastic about science and technology. Because the major component of funding of research is coming from the public money in India. Still, I think more than 90% of the research is being done by the public fund. In private sector, we have very little, and they have a right to know that. So how they will be benefited is the one objective. And also now the entire paradigm of R&D is on sustainability. So that aspect should also be highlighted somewhere, how it will be helping the environment, how it will ensure the sustainability. And then the student should be encouraged to adopt, to take up science in their as a career option. Okay, so even our new science policy, which is in a draft stage only, the science communication has been you know identified a very important area where a lot of provision has been included. Chapter 8 is fully on that, science communication and public engagement, because this AWSAR is a part, you can say, an offshoot of that program itself, where we are capacity building. We are trying to build that capacity of science communication, and to begin with your own research, because you understand it better, and then the research in science communication, then the outreach activity, and mainstreaming science communication. Means like the way, as a to you as a researcher, we are asking you should also communicate science in a popular way, is mainstreaming of mainstreaming the science communication. So in the policy, giving uh, to give that implement the policy aspect of science communication of sir is on that line, has been designed on that line. And uh, I think this is, first is, this is your, when you're doing a fundamental research, this is the data. And what is research? Research is to generate new knowledge. Okay, it may be in the base, in maybe in the fundamental research, or it may be in applied research. But there is always some data, except the theoretical physics. Then we have to sort it out, that data, we have to arrange them, we have to present them visually, and then explain with a story, with again its implication on the society. So if these things are with you, I think uh, um, you will be clear when you are crafting your storyline, before you you know uh, explain it, or detail it out. Okay, so the social, economic, political, and diplomatic aspect of your research, the significance, that should also be there. And these are, again, I think we have discussed. Now I think I'll come to a storyline. uh, so basics of popular science writing is that you think in your mother tongue. Okay, if you think in your mother tongue, then we need to have a basic understanding of science. If you want to take science to the people, first communicate it with your grandparents. It was said long back by Einstein, and this is possible if you yourself have a basic understanding of science. Because whenever Einstein has said, like, people know me more than my research. It was a very strange statement he made. People knew very little about my research, but they know me more as I'm a scientist. So uh, now let's. This is a journal formula when we are using a journalistic approach for for the story. Because why I'm preparing you mentally, I'm coming to a case study, which is my favorite science reporting story so far I have ever come across, in terms of the whatever we look forward, it was exactly delivered in the same way. So this is called the reverse pyramid, where the most important information about an event can be given, like we say 5 or 6 or 7 uh, W's and one H. And the crucial information explain the topic, the argument, controversy, story, evidence, background details, etc. should come in the middle. And the tail, extra information, interesting relating item, journalistic assessment, means your own assessment, where we are saying ki the significance or its connection with the society, the social, economic, political dimension. That should be your assessment as a writer of that. Okay, so uh, these are all very obvious thing. So crafting the title, because you all have to work on the title. Most of the time I have found it's not conveying, because that title itself should establish a connect with the reader. Okay, so that is very important. Don't use any technical word in that. Don't use any equation or any symbol or any kind of thing. It should be such, it may be in a philosophical statement. It may be a something, title which is already there, but it has a some usability or some connect which can create that relationship, which has in one way or the other the your finding are connected with that. So like, to me, filmy posters are always, I'm great admirer of those posters, because many time I found the illustration with those words clarify what is the in the main text of that article, like the way the films are. So here the Mother India, Ek Phul Do Mali, and the Talwar. Talwar was based on that Arushi murder case. So these are some, and this was the Lagan. So by this illustration and with this word, you can make it out what is it all about if we are talking about a film. Okay, so these are some Hollywood, the one of the some of the best, title or posters with that title. Okay, but now if we look at the some of the title which we I have collected from your write-ups. So can you say this? Can somebody will be get interested immediately by reading those titles? Cyanobacterial biofilm in biofortification. Now, what is cyanobacteria? Now, what is biofilm? And then a cutting edge technology in agriculture and human health. So this article in the, or this title is good for a for a technical journal, but not as a popular article. So here I try to categorize them: very poor, average, and good. So you say the solar panel what waste, other side of clean energy. So can we give something better, very catchy, very crispy, rather than again a title of a textbook chapter or a title of a technical paper? I think here comes that the case study which I'm always talking about. Now look at, this was a research. Okay, and first you have to develop a abstract of your research in a popular way. Like if this was a research done in a German laboratory, where they have isolated an active compound from the spinach, Palaxil. Okay, and when they were testing that compound, they found it fall into the category of steroid, ecosterin, which the name they gave. And now this was the only the research. What was the research? The hypothesis was that there are in spinach there are certain compound which enhance the boost power. That was their hypothesis. Okay, and then under that hypothesis they collected, they isolated that active compound which said to be enhancing the power of and then after extraction of that, isolation of that active compound, it was tested on 40 to 45 people, and it turned out that yes, it does boost the power. So this was the research. Now, how the writer has approached to this story. So now something was very fresh in the public memory, that was papaya. Okay, he used to eat spinach just to impress her girlfriend. That was because after eating that, he was, having power and killing many people, all that gunda people and all that, to impress, his girlfriend. So this cartoon, that the popularity of that cartoon, he utilized beautifully in this article. He said the papaya is right, eating spinach does boost power. And then the qualifying statement under this line is, scientists say vegetable has a steroid like chemical and must be on the list of prohibited item of athletes. Now, if we come to that, the research in a German laboratory, they isolated an active compound, spinach. The procedure, technique of extraction, isolation, common man is not interested. So it was not given in that. Analyze the property of that active compound, ecosterin, which fall into the category of steroid. Then process of analysis method, not necessary. It was not mentioned. Okay. The testing of aldosterone on a group of people of outcome of some, very important, including methodology and findings. How this testing was done, there was a 76 people were given the dose, and there was a control, there was a placebo effect also, everything was done there. And then the importance, significance and implication of the finding, that means social, national, international. Now that means, what is the finding of that? Then as a mediator, the body, international body which conduct the dope test, they are saying, if that aldosterone is found, they should be banned, the athlete should be banned. Okay, this is the implication of that finding which has been suggested here. So that means, like, and now what will be the implication? Suppose if as an Indian I'm writing the story, in my case, most of the athletes are vegetarian and their major diet component is palak only. So all will be, failed in the dope test, because this aldosterone will be there because it is found naturally in the spinach. Okay, so here I have to do some mediation also, not only giving simple my finding, my result, but its implication. So that means if we analyze the entire text of this article, so papaya, right, eating spinach does boost power. That means, to coin the title, he has used public memory. Then second sentence, he is giving something which is relatable. Scientist has recommended that the aldosterone, a hormone found in spinach, be included in the prohibited list of dope test. Okay, so major, first is the major finding that the spinach has a active compound which is fall into the category of uh, 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 steroid. This was the major finding. It has been given here only, and that correlation which was already in the public memory, he gave the example of this papaya cartoon, which is very famous cartoon. And then this is scientist, you may or may not give like the name of your lab, the scientist who has been working here, it has been given. And then a study involving 46 athlete was carried out. Here the methodology of testing the efficacy of that hormone which has been isolated. They trained 3 times per week for a span of 10 weeks. The entire methodology, participant was split into 4 groups. Some were given aldosterone and other a placebo. Those who took that compound, their performance improved by 3 times, okay, as much as those who did not. So the methodology on testing was also explained as per the study, significantly higher increase in muscle mass was also observed in those participants there that were dosed with etostery. So you can, and then further special comment if is there. Uh, uh, Martin Parr, this was a one of the study scientists, said that the hypothesis was that we would see an increase in the performance, but we didn't expect it to be that big. It is not written in first person, it is written in third person. Somebody is going there and reporting on that. Okay, then we recommend to WADA, a World Anti-Dope Agency, in our report that the substance be added to the doping list. We think that if it increase the performance, then that unfair advantage should be uh, eliminated, she added. That means they have recommended to WADA that it should be included into the dope test. Okay, so anti-doping agency are currently not allowed to test for the this particular compound, and because it is not on the list of banned substances. He explained this combined with this greater than expect to on the performance, because they are saying it enhances the performances of a performance of a athlete 3 times, and that will be unfair. But look at, if I'm an Indian and my all my athletes are there, the major diet who are vegetarian, their diet is on this spinach, so they all will be out. That will be the significance of this research for me in India. So that as a mediator, it should be included in that. Then the special social implication I have already told you, and lesser important but makes story more interesting and relevant for the specific group. So WADA, Russia, the Rasuda, this is a again testing agency of Russia, because at that time when this story was published, there was a time for a Winter Olympic, etc. This means that the Russian athletes were banned from competing under their national flag, but the suspension was lifted following a controversial WADA vote. Blah blah blah. What is the political thing were there at that time? It was also so. One research is not in isolation, but it has a many connotation. To make that story interesting, you have to do that. Don't look at like a Arjun ki aankh looking only for your research outcome only, but how this outcome will uh, uh, you know uh, affect the fabric of the society as a whole, nationally and internationally. Okay, so here comes the role of as a writer, as a mediator, which you have to add into that. Okay, so uh, I think these are all. And now the question came about the illustrations. Now I'll give you that example. Uh, this is we done this. They were cartoon actually. You can call them illustration also. During the time of Corona, when every day the new research finding was coming, and we were supposed to communicate it to the people. And now the major research component is here. How this SARS virus, it was a flu virus which was modified from this SARS-1 to SARS-2 by some having more additional active site for attachment, etc., etc. So and there was no vaccine at that time because it was done earlier. So here the entire technical information in a popular way is given here, and where this is a cartoon where this 6 that flu virus, which are not that dangerous, except this 6th one and 7th one. 6th one is a SARS-1 and this is SARS-2. He's saying now this is a time for me to rule the world without any limitation, because there is no vaccine. Okay, so now here this was a how we make a distinction between what was the difference between SARS-1 and SARS-2, because SARS-2 has a additional cells of replication in the throat cells. Before going to the lungs, it was active in the throat, and where even a person may or may not be having a sign of infection, but he was a person who become a carrier. He can infect other. So here this is SARS-1 and SARS-2. They are saying my cousin SARS-1 is a bit dumb. I am smart. Why I'm smart? Because I have a 2 site of replication. And this is saying promoted with an additional site for replication. So if this you read this in by reading this, I think this is a complementary to this one, and this one is complementary to the picture, and also it is giving a visual relief and a comic relief also. So your illustration should not be about your procedure mechanism, how your molecule or is affecting a cell or etc, whatever is that, but it should be independent of that. Okay. So here, this was a picture when before the vaccine, when there was no vaccine. So only the idea was to prevention measures were applicable, and we were talking about those only. So giving all that information about the SARS-1 and SARS-2, they say, are we safe, dear, now? Because here the virus as a plus and minus strain has been shown here as a male and female. They are relaxing on a beach. It's saying, yes, no vaccine, no evolutionary pressure to find a new host, just relax, darling. So here it has nothing to do with this technicality, but when you read this technical aspect, it give a relief to author or to reader. Okay, so illustration may be such, not like illustration about your mechanism or process, etc. Okay, so this was again, showing, the gravity of the situation. When say the other viruses, because this was the virus that time, most aggressive virus in terms of its efficacy and infectious rate. So the yellow fever, chicken pox, and rabies, and HIV, they were also the RNA based virus, and they were look very sad and not happy. They say, I'm very sad and angry, no respect for oldies. Corona is given a status of deity, a Corona Maya. So what is happening in the society? Because the people start worshipping Corona as a Corona Maya. So that aspect has been utilized to create a humor in that article itself, where you are talking about this RNA SARS virus. Okay, so this was illustration where you say you become a carrier without showing any symptoms of coronavirus. So these kinds of illustration, I think, which add some uh, uh, mm, so they were a rumor at that time. They said like this virus has been created in the lab. So these are different viruses, smallpox, polio, and HIV. They're saying, oh my God, he has no mother and father. That means he's in a test tube virus. My God, such a big fraud on us, kind of thing. So this is all I can say. So this all I want to say. Uh, there is no hard and fast rule for writing in a popular article, but you develop your own style, like the way we used to say about the Ghalib Sahab, है दुनिया में और भी सखुनवर, means skilled people, बहुत अच्छे, but कहते हैं कि गालिब का अंदाजे बयां और है. So you come out with your own unique style of अंदाजे बयां about your own research. So I think uh, this question answer is, I think, from my side, this is over. But if anything is there, we can take up the question. Bharat ji, अगर कोई सवाल है तो हम उसको we can take the questions now.
So there are some queries. Some participants have raised their hand. So
Yeah.
I'm unmuting them right now so they can address their question one by one. Amodini Mishra, are you there?
Yes.
Amodini Mishra, Could you please switch on your mic and camera?
Vyomaji, there are some questions on Q&A also. We
Yes,
can
sir.
take.
Yes, sir. We will address that too.
Yeah.
But there are 5-6 participants who have raised their hands. So we will
Okay.
address that questions first. Modini
Hello.
Mishra, are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, could you please turn on your camera?
My camera is on.
Okay,
No.
could you please ask your query?
Hello.
Hello.
Mishra ji, please ask your question.
Sorry, in your AWSAR story, may you use some internet figures like water source and rivers like that?
What kind of figures? Pictures.
And yeah.
Pictures.
For general
See,
description.
AWSAR is not going for a magazine as of now. So therefore, simple illustrations like a picture or these things are not actually needed there. Okay. Although we would love to have that. So what you can do is, if there is any specific need, if you are referring to a specific object or specific instance of illustration, that's fine. Say, for example, if you have referred to something like a very dirty portion of a river, so that should be welcome. But even that is not required, because your research is not making the river dirty. It's something different, right?
Yeah.
So you will be always talking about something else rather than the river itself.
Okay, sir.
So that's what I guess. So it's not absolutely necessary.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Modini. Asmita, could you please ask your question?
Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, actually, I have two queries. Basically, we are from engineering background. So as per the previous awardees, we hardly have any living creature in our research. So how exactly do we need to present our story so that it becomes interesting? Because my area is basically process design.
Okay, I have a similar question here. So which says that life sciences are close and alive, but physical sciences are abstract. What kind of care should be taken to convey the same? Okay, and this is what we always talk about science communication. In science communication, like I said before, the concepts are not always felt, seen, smelt, or touched. Okay, so they are not easily available to our senses. In such cases, we use tools like analogies. Okay, so the process, you can always talk about, if you're talking about a process and a change in the process, we can always use a similar analogy and say that this happens if this happens. Say, for example, we can all you can relate a process is a systematic and sequential event, right? Take any sequential event that is known to the people and say that if this happens, a change can happen. And maybe you can use the cooking itself, a recipe itself, as a sort of an analogy. So similar analogies can be used, similes can be used and explained. So that's the most important thing, is to bring what you know and then build upon that what you don't know. So in communication, the best strategy is to start from the known and take the people to the unknown. So what is known is how you cook a recipe and the sequential operation that happens. Okay, that's the important thing. See, there is another question related to this, which I would like to take this opportunity to answer again. Give me a second. Okay, do we give all the details of the research that we do? Okay, it's not necessary. We assume that the readers have a minimum understanding. That's what Dr. Tyagi said. Up to 10th standard, they have an understanding. And beyond that, they whatever you are doing, you are going to tell them. But then even when telling this, you are not going to give all details of all methodologies. That is not required. Only the crucial methodologies are required. Suppose we are making, I am going to give this analogy to you. So when we give a recipe, do we say that please start the stove or light the stove, keep the kadai on that? We don't say. Okay, we only say that take a kadai and fry. We don't even say that you put oil into this. Okay, when we want somebody to fry that, we only say fry, because we assume that the person knows that without lighting the stove, you cannot cook. So therefore, this understanding should be there, but you will also have to look at the audience. And if the audience is totally strange to the kind of research that you are doing, or to the science that you are talking about, then maybe you will have to go a little further, then explain to them.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next question.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Sudarshan.
Yeah, very good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, sir, I would like to ask, sir, can we use popular cartoon characters in our stories from internet sources?
For example?
Sir, like any cartoon characters like Tom or Jerry, anything, sir, from internet sources, sir?
I didn't get you.
No, I think Kollegalji, I'll answer. No, because
Yeah.
there is a question of copyright here. You create your own character.
All right, sir. Yes, sure.
Yeah, you cannot, because there will be a copyright issue on that. So it's better you make your, because see, if you it's not we are looking for the exact or very beautiful drawing. It's only the science tone or that kind of thing is it should convey the idea.
Yes.
Okay, so it's better that you use your own characters. You develop your own character.
Sure.
Don't copy them, don't cut paste them, because it may have a copyright issue.
There are other aspects also. Say, for example, Chota Bheem has a copyright. Okay, so you cannot create that character. Tarzan has a copyright. You cannot create that character. But you can always use the Puranic characters. There is a danger. The people may get offended. So you have to be careful. Create your own character.
Okay,
That will be good.
Thank you, sir.
You can use your own name as in a cartoon. Billu, Sillu, your nickname can be means like your own name. Whatever your nickname is, giving you an idea.
Yes.
Because this just happened because we were bringing out a newsletter, look like a very fatty. So the cartoon, and it's called like Gulu Ki Soch, alternate thinking par tha wo. So that way you can do that. You're free. Why to restrict your imagination? Create your own characters.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudarshan. Nitanshu, could you please address your query?
Yeah, my question is, hello.
Yes, you're audible. Yes, you are audible.
So my question is if I want to explain something with the analogy, and that analogy is being used by some other researchers, so can I use the same analogy to explain my concept of? Hello?
Yeah.
Analogy पे तो copyright नहीं है, but you can do that. See, plagiarism नहीं होना चाहिए. But I think you can use that, or you can create your own analogy. Why you want to? Mentally, I think we are very conditioned. Whatever is existing,
there are
after doing that,
yeah. There are two things. One, is your audience the same as the earlier one? Let's take, for example, when we talk about the expanding universe, we always talk about Hubble's analogy of cooking a cake. Okay, the Hubble gave an analogy that when you put a cake in the oven, what happens is that those raisins at the outside of the cake, they expand faster and they have become more distant than the ones which are at the core of the cake. Okay, this is the analogy. The analogy is fine. You can use the analogy here also to explain expanding the universe. But if a person doesn't know how a cake is cooked in your audience, it makes no sense, right? So you can use similar analogies that are appropriate for your setting. That's always there. So you can have your own creativity and think about these different kind of analogies here.
Okay, sir. I got the point. Thank you.
Welcome.
The one with the name, participant with the name PC, could you please address your question?
Yes, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, ma'am. This is Dr. Amri. Actually, my question is regarding the copyright for the illustrations, which we often use in our research article. Like when we are describing the work in the story, I have taken the reference of some of the illustrations that are created by me, like in a normal schematic representation, and it has been used as a part of a research publication. So I can take the copyright through the publisher. So can such illustrations be included, sir?
There are two questions. One, is the illustration absolutely necessary for your article? If so, yes. If not, is there a way out without using the illustration, without the help of illustration? Can you write your story? This is a question I ask mainly because we should be able to explain everything even without the help of some illustrations. And that is because when we talk about popular science, we are not only talking about the writing or AWSAR essays. We are also talking about science communication through other media. It could be a talk, a simple talk, where you don't have any props like a PowerPoint presentation or something like that. In that case, how do you explain? Okay, so when if you face that situation, you do not have a process, you do not have a mechanism to show your process diagram, then how do you explain that? So do the same thing here. If you have a issue of using an illustration, if you cannot use an illustration for any reason like this, can you tell the same thing in a different way so that people understand?
Okay. Sir, can actually the research is related to commercializable product. So can I use the real image of the product instead of the schematic?
Definitely.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Sneha, could you please address your question?
Yeah. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So, good afternoon. Actually, I wanted to know that actually I have two questions here. One is like we have been hearing about.
Neha, thoda loudly.
Hello, am I audible?
You are audible,
Neha,
but
thoda
a little
loud, bit
feeble.
loud, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, sure. So what I wanted to ask is there are two questions actually. One, we were hearing a lot about using dialogues or dialects in our article. So if an article, say it requires use of dialogues, I mean, it is appropriate. It's not core R&D, but it requires some application, and it's on life sciences. I'm working in health sciences, but precisely in medical science. So it involves life characters. So it is a good practice to include the same in that case? One. And two, how far we can experiment with the format of an article? Can we go this creative, like a poem or like a stage art or something like that, theatrical? Is it advisable in that case?
Okay, Tyagi, I am answering this. One is that if you're talking about science communication, yes, you can experiment anything as long as the communication ensures that what you want to convey is conveyed properly. Okay, number one. Number two is that if you're talking about AWSAR, as of now, the AWSAR restricts you to a writing format. So that's but within the text format, you have lots of scope to explore. Poetry is one. That's one. But then poetry is the most difficult because when you use the various tools of or the grammar of poetry, then there will be some difficulties in explaining scientific concepts clearly, and therefore that will be a problem with the poetry. But otherwise, poetry can also be used. There have been extremely good examples of poetry, also excellent examples of poetry also explaining science. So that should not be a restriction. The other question that you asked is that is the dialogue format okay? If you choose the dialogue format, if it is absolutely necessary. Okay, but not necessarily that for everything that we use dialogue format. What we have noticed in our write-ups is that the dialogue format is used. It is like this, sir, or it is Beam and someone talking about, and Beam asks this one, his friend, that what is the sun? Why is the sun big? And the other one says, sun is a huge star. It is a white dwarf. You see, you got the point?
Yeah.
So the dialogue is not simple. It is again technical. Okay, it makes no sense. Breaking down your technical things into two dialogues doesn't make it simple. So even when the other person explains the sun is a huge ball of energy which gives out light as in the which gives out its energy in the form of light and all these things, then it's okay. If it simply says it is a one type of star or these things, it makes no sense. So even the dialogue should not be technical. So the format is not important. The way you use the format is most important. Secondly, like I said, it should not be obviously, what we call as forced examples or similes. Okay, like there is an inanimate object which suddenly becomes live and says that I have my family. What does the chip has a family? Does it give birth to something else? A child can ask these questions while we don't ask the questions. So this kind of absurd experiments can be avoided.
Okay. Yeah.
I won't say the chip cannot be used in a first person, this one that can be used, but one has to be very creative. So dialogue format is appropriate when you have you can use the dialogue format, but when you use the dialogue format, the language has to be simple.
Yeah, understood, sir. Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you for addressing it. Thank you.
Vyoma, next.
Yes, sir. Akanksha, could you please address your question? Akanksha, are you there?
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Hello, sir, and thank you for the interesting points. I have a question regarding representation of my story. So sometimes, like, to delve deeper into the ocean of simplicity, I might choose to give a lot of background to the audience and keep my story as general as possible. But as I followed Tyagi sir's presentation, according to him, a major focus should be given on my research. So I wanted to ask that what is the extent of explanation is required when it comes to my own my original research in the story as compared to the background to get the audience in this at the same page.
Can I? Tyagi ji?
So you may address the query.
Okay. So the thing is, the first thing that we need to, as science communicators, need to understand is that what are we going to tell? How much are we going to tell? Okay. It is not necessary that we need to tell everything that we know. Number one. Number two is when you generalize, when you do this, there is also like you said, when you write, you have to be crisp. Crispness doesn't mean simplifying doesn't mean you keep on talking about things that are not necessary. Okay, while setting a stage, okay, while explaining a thing, okay, I can always say that in a room the sound was not very clear. Okay, but to explain that, if I start setting the room, explain the dimensions of the room and all, that becomes unnecessary. So this redundancy, or I should say unnecessary details, we have to be very careful. Is it absolutely necessary? Then you use it. If it is not absolutely necessary, then those details can be done away with. So crisp writing doesn't mean that your write-up goes beyond what is required to be told. Okay, and the kind of words that you use, as long as they are very simple, straightforward, fun. And if you start using flowery language many times, and this is what we do, thinking that a good science writing or good writing always means that a lot of adjectives, lot of flowery things, lot of bombastic words, then things go wrong. So we tend to write more unnecessary things. It looks very attractive reading. While reading, it appears attractive, but then after brooding over, you will find that you have not got anything extra or any information. So that should not happen.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So when you say to avoid flowery language, so I mostly tend to like also include questions while I'm writing. So does that add to my story, or
you
is
can
it
ask questions where it is relevant? Where it is relevant. Okay, let's say we are talking about let's say gulab jamun. So I would say, have you tasted gulab jamun? That's one way of engaging the audience. Okay, that's it. But that is one of the essential things when you engage. But then you cannot keep on asking all the questions. Do you know what is it made up of? Do you know this? Do you know that? So then it becomes a little extra. That's what we mean. Questions are one way of engaging the audience. But then don't make the question look like you are a superior and the reader is inferior. That's one of the mistakes most of these people do. Your reader is not anything inferior or not any lesser than you. We are all on equal terms. The only thing that we do is, I know this information, you doesn't know. So we are having a chit chat in a different setting. So we may not be, face to face, but then we are having a dialogue like friends. So if you use your language in that sense, the engagement will be much, much easier. You also have a doubt and you're asking that doubt, and you're answering that doubt also, answering that question also. That will be good. But instead of that, if you say that you don't know what this means, that is a little upsetting. You got the point?
Yes, I got it.
Questions are welcome. They are one of the tools of engagement, but then how you use that is very important.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Pranali Das.
There is something which called editing. So first, you can write the way you want to write it. When you yourself will read, you will find that this is not required. This is not required. So you have to cut down at some place where this relevancy is no more to your main text or your main research. Yeah.
Pranali Das, could you please address your
Yes,
question?
Vyoma.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, all of you. Thank you for conducting this interactive session. My question is related to the word counts. Actually, as Tyagi sir said, that if someone is completing his or her story within the 1,000 word limits, but sir, while uploading the story, I have found that if the word limit is less than 1,000, we couldn't able to upload it. So for that reason, actually, if someone includes some summary at the end or some points to highlight or the moral of the story, would it like a positive point or would it going to add to a negative point to the story evaluation, sir?
That's a technical problem.
So my question is audible.
Yeah, your question we have understood. So the problem is that the software or the system.
See, we have kept the word limit. There is a minimum and maximum limit is there. So
Yes,
even
sir.
if it's less than that word.
Yes, sir.
Vyoma, you are there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I'm there.
व्योमा, ये
yes,
हमारा
sir.
मिनिमम लिमिट कितना है वर्ड्स
Sir,
काउंट?
1,000 words.
No, what is
1,000
the
words.
minimum limit of the word count? हाँ, 1,000.
Sir,
yeah.
it should be
And
1,000.
maximum
1,500, sir. Else they won't be able to submit the story.
15. Yeah. So it should not be less than 1,000. Even it will be 999. It will not be accepted by the system.
Yes, sir.
Clear? Yeah.
Yeah. So my question is that if for that reason, if I'm going to include some moral of the story or some summary in some 2-3 lines, would it be like counted as some unnecessary things, or would it be for the evaluation part? I'm asking, sir, if I'm going to in order to make that minimum word count, if I include some 1 or 2 line extra.
If it is complementing the story, if it is complementing whatever you are communicating, that's fine.
Okay,
but if it is not, and if it is irrelevant, obviously that will be counted as a negative thing. Very simple. So you can write an answer in one paragraph, and if you cannot complete that in one paragraph, if you start adding something about yourself, that will not be counted. Okay, it has to be relevant to the subject that you are talking about. That's it. And
Thank you so
this
much.
is not in terms of evaluation, not as an evaluator I'm speaking as a reader. Okay, a reader will see through that there are things which the author has added unnecessarily. So if you want to be a good author, good writer, please avoid.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Rituparna, could you please address your query?
Hello. Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, you have to be a bit loud, Rituparna, bit louder.
Well, this is my question is in connection with the research setting part of the communication. Like my research is basically in field of model organisms. So model organisms research is usually less tangible to the general public because the actual difference from benchtop to the bedside is very wide, and it downsizes the work that we do in our lab. So would it be really wise to establish an analogy in terms of the processes that is common between the model and the humans, or directly emphasize the importance of the findings in as general terms as possible? So what is the right course of action in this case?
So the best thing is, what is it that you want to tell? Okay, is it the results that you have got after using the model organism, or is it about the model organism? Okay, these are the two things. So if you are looking at this, okay, then it becomes very clear what is it that you want to tell. You have to decide. Okay, and based on that, your story will be there. Let's say, for example, I'm using a Drosophila. Okay, that's a fly. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when I use a fly and when I am using one of its gustatory sensors, okay, so what do I say? I ask the audience, or I ask myself the question, how does Drosophila get attracted, or how does Drosophila always come to the rotten banana, but not to a ripe banana? Okay, it is overripe banana that comes there. So how does it come? So what does it get attracted to? Okay, so these are the questions that we ask. So it is one. And secondly, somebody asked a question that it is very difficult to talk about physics because the concepts are very not clear, and they are very abstract, and therefore it will be very difficult to convey that than the biology. But when it comes to molecular biology, we also find a lot of concepts which are very abstract. Okay, there also we need analogies. So what we do with the physics, we do here also. When we say about a black hole, so or space time continuum, we use different kinds of analogies to explain that. Similarly, when we talk about the receptor and the protein interaction, or the epitope on the receptor, so we use different types of analogies. Okay, so it's the same. So when I talk about epitope and the receptor, it immediately you could recognize that. Okay, whereas if I have to speak to a common person who doesn't know this, I will have to say that the receptors are the hands which are used,
right,
okay, to hold the what do I say, smell molecule or whatever it is. Okay, and the fingers are the epitopes. Easy to understand. So the analogies that you give, but then when I use this analogy in the story, every part, it should be only the hand. I cannot bring leg there. I cannot bring my head there. Okay, this is the kind of analogy. So what is it that you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about Drosophila, or do you want to talk about the understanding that you got using this Drosophila is important? Okay, and if you are talking about Drosophila and you want to highlight it as a model organism, then you can say that, okay, fly swatters, a very easily understandable thing. Okay, and which has a connotation, a funny connotation. Use that, and based on that you build your story that the fly can also be a tool for greater understanding of life. Why not?
right. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, can I ask another question if time permits?
That is biomass.
Actually,
Yes,
I also okay. So for improving the skills, I usually read science articles published in Guardian or TOI. But sir, is there any other good suggestion that can, I mean, a good platform where I can hone the skills? Because I need to develop. I feel that I should look for a career in communication. So, is there any way where I can get a training, or as a practice in general I can improve upon?
I think in the National Center for Biological Sciences recently had an announcement that for science communication, they are conducting a course of, I think, 4 weeks or 12 weeks for people between age 18 to 28. Please check that on NCBS website. The deadline is day after tomorrow, I think. Okay. And second thing is, yes, there are, read as much as possible in any language. So that gives you a lot of understanding of how communication can be done. It is not necessary that you only need to read popular science articles. You also read literature. You also read essays. You also read poetry. Whatever you can read and enjoy. And why do you enjoy? That's the question. If you ask, you will find that they communicate certain things to you. Or can you use the same kind of techniques or same kind of tools in your writing? And that's it. That will prepare you for anything. Okay, you can be a good researcher. At the same time, you can also be a good science communicator. This skill of communicating is necessary for every type of career that you can think of, not necessarily only for science communicators.
Thank you, sir. I will surely look for this course. Thank you so much, sir.
Nisamir, could you please address your question?
Am I audible? Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, you're audible.
Sir, my question is, can we mention the name of funding source from which I'm getting fellowship? For example, I'm pursuing PhD from a particular
The same answer. Is it necessary for your reader to know where you get your funding?
Yes, sir.
Is it necessary? If it is necessary, yes. Your reader needs to know what research you are doing, where you get fund for. That is not absolutely necessary for your reader or for your audience. And that mention is necessary only for your funding agency.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Gauri, could you please address your question? Gauri, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
So my question is regarding the language that we use. I'm sorry if this was addressed earlier. I was traveling, so I missed the beginning part of this. So since there is no prescribed format and since we have the freedom to choose multiple things, I encountered this thing to be tricky, that whether I should use it, whether I should write in the way, let's say, the science and technology section of a newspaper would be, or whether I use a conversation mode. In the problem I faced here was, is there something as the language is becoming too simple? For example, if I write it as a conversation, or as if I'm telling a story to a child, then does it become too simple? Is there such a thing?
The language that you use depends upon the audience that you address. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
If you are addressing your colleagues in your research department, obviously you speak in a different language. If you are talking to your maybe husband or wife or parent or somebody else, the whole setting will be different. The language, the words that you use will be different. If you are talking to your colleagues, you may use a lot of slang. Okay.
Yeah.
Similar thing happens here. It is not necessarily that you use the same type of format for everything, but when it comes to children, there is a difference. The vocabulary of children is very less. So can you use only that vocabulary and explain? That's the question. And and again, from age 2 years to almost 12 years, there are different groups of audience. Whereas after 18 years of age to 40 years, there is one group. Okay, who doesn't know your subject. Whereas here, it's a huge range of audience. So therefore, for each age group, you will have to have a different kind of language and different kind of approach also. Okay, and that is something that you need to understand. So if you keep this in mind, then you can address any audience. And you will use the analogies that they understand. You will use the language that they are very familiar and comfortable with. And you will also use the examples that will attract their attention.
So we are actually free to choose the audience to whom our article is written. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's your choice. But for AWSAR, we have defined. Okay, so but for AWSAR, it is
writing of a general audience.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that would be general audience, adults.
Yes. You are writing general public is your audience. Yes. General audience means like we presume that they may not have a.
They are not children. They are not very young children.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are not children. Okay.
Very young children or school-going children. But general, it may be your mother, father, uncle, aunties who don't have a scientific background. If they want to know about your research, how you write that?
And secondly, the language that at present with the AWSAR is Hindi or English.
So you have to be very, very clear when you are penning down your data. Who is your audience? Your address. Yeah.
Okay.
Your word. I think some disruption in between.
Yes, I wasn't able to hear that actually. But what I
And
understood
secondly, you can write in any language. It's not necessary that English or this one when you want to communicate to others. Okay, but for AWSAR purposes, for AWSAR competition, as of now, only 2 languages we accept.
Yeah.
That's it.
And for AWSAR, it's also that the audience is not
General,
children. It
not
should be for
children,
adults,
not
but
too young
not that.
children. Anyone who has passed the matriculation,
General
general
public.
audience,
We call it a
who
general
doesn't,
public.
yeah, general public who doesn't understand your subject.
Okay, thank you so much.
Vyoma,
is that over? Or I have one question. Oh.
Yes.
There is one question from someone here. So let me just address that. If there is a name of a compound, how can I simplify it? You don't have to simplify names. Okay, you cannot simplify Kollegala Sharma. Kollegala Sharma is Kollegala Sharma. Tyagi is Tyagi. We are identified by these names. So DDT is an identifier. You cannot simplify DDT, but you can always look at things where you need a different kind of thing. Say, for example, if you come across a difficult name, just check whether that is a difficult name. It can be a concept, about a concept also, whether it is an identifier or an adjective or a classifier. So these are the different types of things that we come across. If it is a classifier or this thing, you can explain, but if it is an adjective, you can do away with. If it is a identifier, a specific name, a noun, then you have to use that as it is.
So may I go and ask one more question, please? Am I audible?
That is for Vyoma. Yeah.
Yes, you may ask your query, please.
Yes. So, sir, is there any evaluation criteria different for postdoc and PhD stories submitted, considering that postdocs will be like only 20 shortlisted? Would you please help us in this regard?
The criteria are the same.
Yes, Vyoma.
The evaluation criteria are the same, except that the content will be looked at, because the PDFs will have are expected to have a little more good content to explain, because their research is almost complete.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Mukesh, could you please address your query?
Yeah, thank you so much. My question was, in order to portray an image into the audience mind, we use figure of speech or metaphor, as Sir said, simile. In doing so, like we end up using flowery and jargons. So how can we avoid that?
Similes and analogies need not be always with relation to flowery language. Okay, they can also be very simple, and that is what we need. Okay, like for example, when we say I will again say the let's say we take an analogy for pizza. So how do you explain pizza to a person who has not seen it, who has not tasted it? That's the challenge in science. Okay, now how do I explain that to him? Can I say it is a tandoori roti? No, it cannot be. It is similar to tandoori roti, but it is not tandoori roti. So you need to look for certain thing and then explain that to somebody. It is similar to, you can always say that it is a soft tandoori roti. It's also baked in oven. Okay, tandoori roti with lot of makhan. something like that we will use. So that is the analogy. That's a simple thing. It's not a flowery language. So analogies and similes are not flowery English or flowery language. They are the concepts similar to explain concepts. You use something that one has experienced and use that experience as a tool to explain.
Thank you, sir.
Tyagi ji, am I right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're
Thank you,
right,
Dr.
sir.
Tyagi. Thank you,
Well,
Dr.
sir.
Sharma.
Yeah, Mukesh, you seems to be a very creative person because I have seen your your signature. It's done. I think same thing should also be reflected in your article.
Yes,
Dr. Tyagi, I have a problem.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a problem. Like I think in an abstract term, and that is where I find difficulties in explaining through words. I can use cartoons and all, which you have shown beautifully. I can, like draw and all, explain through cartoon. But explaining through words, which these women's are very, have mastery over it. But we, I actually have any problems. I have a problem.
No.
I think
You see, it is not like that.
Try, dear. Try. I think you are
Mukesh.
very.
Mukesh, don't think that these are two different faculties. I do understand these are
Gender-wise
two
kind of
different
thing you're talking about.
faculties, but then you can always explain. You don't have to always look for flowery language for everything. The simplest language is the most communicative. Try
Absolutely.
that. It is possible.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Balaji, could you please address your question?
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Can I, in my popular science story, can I mention the quotes or some other statements by the pioneers or the previous scientists or researchers?
Yes. That is allowed. But it should not be out of context only.
Yes.
If
Anything
you,
relevant.
If it's supports, yeah. See, you are you are the craftsman. You can craft your article in any way, only which should not be illogical and which repel the reader from reading that. Yaar, kya likha hai yaar, baat kya kar raha hai, likh kya raha hai. It should not come that. So it should be very logical progression of your article, and anything you can by quotation, so always you can give. In fact, I generally say you always start your article with the quote. I mean, as not as a rule, but in many cases you can do that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, AWSAR.
Prince, you can ask your question. Prince, are you there?
Good afternoon, all. Just now answered that. Balaji asked the same question I have, so I answered. Thank you for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Arushi, could you please ask your question?
Yeah, hello, good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
Arushi, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Arushi. Please go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so sir, I have a question that if my research is still unpublished, the main...
We
lost her.
The AWSAR has nothing to do with your work is published or not. Okay, so you are writing altogether in a different format. That is a popular format, and technical writing is a different thing. So you are free to contribute for a condition.
Like we said, there is no conclusion. Okay. So if your article is unpublished, so okay, and you still are continuing with your research. What is it that you are doing? That's what we want to know. And what kind of questions are you trying to answer? And what kind of answers have you found? If you have not found the answers, you will have more questions. So what are the different questions that your research has provided? So you can always talk about these things. So it's not necessary that you have to talk only about the published ones. If you are not published, but you still have something to say, why not? That's one. There's one question here, which is, it is very difficult to understand wood anatomy, and therefore can we use illustrations of others to explain? One thing is that, yes, if you use textbook illustrations, you will have to give credit to them, okay, copyright credit, and how you give, whether you pay for the copyright or anything, that is your responsibility. But then I don't take this argument that we cannot explain things about the internal structure of wood to children. It is possible, with or without illustrations. With illustrations are also possible, without illustrations are also possible. You will have to again resort to the tools that we are talking about, analogies, similes, or experiences that they have, and build upon that. And let me say, if they would not have seen the inside of a wood, I'm not I don't agree with that, because when we cook at home, we do use a lot of vegetables, and we do cut them, and we do see the inside of them. We can build upon that. Using that as a base, we can build upon them and then say that the trees have something different from this. And trees have a harder skin. So things like that is possible. So it's not always I wouldn't say that it is not possible. So communication is just that, telling people with whatever they have understood, building upon that knowledge, and that is communication. And science communication talks about science of that. So they will have some knowledge, we build upon that. That's it. Thank you.
Amit, could you please address your question? Amit, are you there? Okay. Jyoti, could you please ask your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Good afternoon, sir. I want to ask a question from that illustration copyright matter. If I have downloaded 3-4 pics from Google, and by taking a small part of those figures, am I making my own figure? Will that come under that copyright issue?
Check the original illustration. It will have a copyright instruction there. If it is from the common Creative Commons, where Creative Commons 4 is allowed for you to use for any purpose, some copyrights, Creative Commons also have restrictions where you cannot change the originals. So therefore, that will be a copyright violation. You have to check the original illustration.
3 days I am sleeping at 1:30, 2:30 if I'm leaving.
Then only you will have to use it. So use it appropriately. So there are different types of copyright licenses that are given. Some are royalty based, some are Creative Commons, and the Creative Commons means you will have to, and even when you pay, there is a restriction. You are supposed to pay for every use. So for different uses, there is different charges. So therefore, that's another issue. And under the Creative Commons, there are different types of licenses. Some allow you to use it without mentioning the source also. Some allow you to use it with the mention of the source. So you will have to mention the source and use it as it is only for certain purposes like educative purposes. So you cannot use it in a commercial magazine where you sell. And there are some licenses where you can modify the illustration also, but many some don't allow that. So all these conditions will be there. You will have to check that and then use it appropriately.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Wow.
Charu, could you please ask your question? Charu, are you there?
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, you are audible.
Good afternoon, sir. Hello.
Yeah, a little louder, please.
Yeah, am I audible, sir?
You are audible, but a little louder, please.
Okay. Sir, good afternoon. I have two questions. My first question is, can I use the image which I have used already in my published paper? I mean, that image was self-designed by me itself.
We have answered this question earlier also. So if it is absolutely essential, you can use it. But then with regard to copyright issues, you will have to talk to your publisher.
Okay, fine. Or we can do it in some modified way. Fine, sir.
If you can create your own
Yes,
new
sir.
illustration,
Yes,
you're free. So you're creative, you can always do a new illustration.
Thank you. Yes, sir. And so my second question is, if the research is an ongoing mode, ultimately we have to give our story a conclusive end, a social conclusive end. Sir,
we have answered this question also, because your research is ongoing, and if there is no conclusion, you will have more questions. You can always talk about the more questions. Okay, and if your research is related to some social impact, and how does it impact, so you can always talk about that. It's not necessary, it's not, there is no conclusive research as of now, so therefore you will have more questions. You can talk about those questions.
So actually, sir, what I mean to ask, in the conclusion, if the research is of social orientation, so can I add 2 or 3 lines at the end which gives social orientation of my conclusive?
You do not have to forcefully add social conclusions. Okay, so if it is naturally there are questions related to social use of your knowledge, then use it. Okay, so most of the time what happens is that in many research we have found that yes, this will be helping a lot of poor, whereas the poor cannot even go near it. Okay, that's not the kind of thing that we need. Okay, you may have other questions also in that, so that can also be there. The conclusions need not be always related to social, it can be anything. Okay, the conclusions depend upon what kind of research you are talking about, what kind of results that you are talking about, what kind of questions you have asked in the beginning.
Okay, thank you so much.
Shumela, could you please ask your question? Shumela?
Hello, hi ma'am. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, you're audible.
Hello, greetings, sir. Sir, I wanted to ask if we have constructed a new word by joining 2 words to create a new catchy title. So does that work, or it sounds like it sounds vague, or I mean, I should change the title for that.
Can I call you Shutask?
Sorry, sir.
Can I call you Shutask?
No, sir.
No, so now you got the problem. Okay,
yes,
so we cannot identify you as Shutask because you are Shumela Taskin, right?
Yes, sir.
So you can create a new word only if you have a new concept. If it is not there, what is the need? Number one. And even if you have a need to create a word, it should be easily intelligible. I would say intelligible because when we we hear a lot of words and we assume a meaning automatically. Okay, if the kind of a natural understanding comprehension is not possible with your word, it will be a forced new coinage. Okay, we have what this is called as generally neologism. Okay, creating new words for the fun of it. Okay, that is not necessary. Then last thing is that yes, you can create a word which sounds good in your language, and which, if combining these two, the comprehension comes naturally, then fine. If you have to explain what that word means in another 2 sentences, why go to that trouble?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I'll give you an example. Prostitute. Okay, this is one of the words coined recently by this. Now, how many of us understand this? This again is a jargon understood only by the people in the press, not the outsiders. For them, it is just another word, another jargon. So likewise, we scientists also create a lot of new words which may not be used regularly by everyone. So therefore, it is better to avoid these things. But if it is absolutely necessary, keep in mind that it should be easily or easy on your ear. That means it should sound good and it should be naturally comprehensible. That means the moment you hear, you should be able to understand the combined meaning of it.
Thank you, sir.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, please ask.
Yeah, I think it's in some way this question has been answered, but the thing is, I have used some images from a free software that it provides. So a free version of software can be used to create some images. But I have modified those images.
If you're talking about free graphic software and you have
Yes, sir.
used the graphic software to create a new illustration, that
Yes, sir.
you are the author.
Okay,
Okay, so therefore there is no question of copyright. You have only used a tool. Let's say, for example, if you're talking about Photoscape, yeah,
Yes.
fine. Okay, then you can use
Okay,
it
sir.
and do it. And if you are using nowadays, okay, there are artificial intelligence softwares also. Okay, where you can create illustrations, we can modify illustrations, you can create new illustrations. They are all fine. You can use them. You are again the creator because you have asked the question, you have put the query and you have got the answer. But then those illustrations, you can always say that created using artificial intelligence software.
Okay. We can cite the software.
You can
Thank you,
cite
sir.
the software.
Thank you, sir.
Now that is because those softwares are online. Okay, but there are free softwares which you can download and use offline, and those softwares are softwares. So nobody credits Microsoft Word for writing a story. Do you? No. You have all written all the stories on Word and submitted it on this one. So you have not given the credit to them, but you have paid Microsoft for using the software. Okay, so the creator is you. The graphic software is not the creator, you are the creator. But if you use a graphic, convert it, change it, modify it, then the original illustration, photo, or anything that has the credit.
The thing is, I have used some kind of comic figures from that graphic software, but then I made those comics in the Word. So I kind of used a fusion way to tell a story.
Oh, it is not fusion way. If you have used the comic software and the software is free, and if you have used your own illustration, that's fine. But if the illustrations given by them and if they have a copyright, then that is a copyright. Okay, but there are now I understand, like in Scratch or other illustration modules, you will have templates, right? Or like icons, or like that. Okay, so that you would have used, that is allowed because the software gives you freedom to use that. It doesn't ask you for copyright, so therefore that is fine. And once you do that illustration, then you can use it anywhere, whether it is in the Word or on your PowerPoint or for publication, that's fine. So as long as you create the original illustration using your own software. Your own software means the software that you own, and ownership comes either by payment or if it is free, by downloading and agreeing to their license conditions.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Amit, could you
Hello.
please ask your question?
Hello.
Yeah, you're audible, Amit. Yes, you're audible.
I'm from a civil engineering background, and if I want to explain my research, which involves some technical terms, which is unavoidable, how it can be used? I mean, like, I just wanted to make sure, should I not use such terms, or how can I use it?
As I have said, there are very few technical terms which are critical. There are lots of technical terms which we think are absolutely necessary. So distinguishing between these two will help us. Okay. Now I can only say that a concrete is a concrete. Okay. So therefore there is no alternative to concrete. But then mortar is another technical term. There is no alternative to that. Okay. But there can be an alternative to many other things that you use. Okay. The payment can be used in a, there can be an alternative term for payment, which is, in the common parlance also. Please use that. So these are the things that we can always say. For example, the civil engineers have a different name for a footpath. Okay. But a common man understands it only by the term footpath. So use the common man's term there. The concrete is different, mortar is different.
Thank you, sir.
Yashaswini, could you please ask your query?
Good afternoon, sir. Am I audible? Good afternoon, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yes. So based on a previous discussion, it was established that the general audience is like, the audience for AWSAR is a general audience. But say a story has like a setting with like a curious teenager interacting with a researcher. And, since we're already simplifying our research, would this be categorized as like a children's story, or would that be problematic?
No. It won't be problematic, because until unless you are able to explain your concept till that time, there is no problem.
Okay.
I'll
ask this question. I'll ask a question. Okay. Is it Yashaswini? Yeah. Yashaswini.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
If in a children's movie, if there are adults, can we call them as adult movie? No.
No.
Okay.
Yes,
So the
sir.
treatment is different. So the storytelling is different. Okay. Similarly, just because there is a child, we cannot call it as a children's, a literature, children's literature. Children's literature has a different grammar, different approach, different language.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Ankuri, could you please address your question?
How many remain actually?
So there are 8 of them remaining, and we have questions in chat box also.
Okay.
Yes. So Pankuri, could you please ask your query? You're not audible. Your voice is cracking, Pankuri. Sangeeta, could you please ask your question?
Good afternoon, sir. Actually, I wanted to ask like the naming convention. Am I audible now?
No. I think it's.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, Pankuri, go ahead.
Pankuri, could you please ask your question?
Okay. Meanwhile, there is a question here. Sir, should story be scientific or non-scientific? AWSAR is about research in scientific and technical research institutes, and therefore it has to have a content of science or a technology and it should be a communicative story. So this is some anonymous attendee who doesn't want to give his name. Fine. That's the answer.
Sangeeta, could you please ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Good afternoon, sir and ma'am. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, good afternoon.
May I
You're
audible?
audible. Yes, yes.
Yeah. Actually, sir, my story is basically used some enzyme and proteins name. Okay. And means we can change that name. Is it possible we can address this name in our story, or we
Sangeeta,
have
can I change
to
your name?
Sangeeta? Yes,
We
sir.
have answered this question. Okay. The thing is, if it is an identifier, amylase,
Yeah.
I cannot change.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Amylase reacts or digests sugars, right?
Yes.
Carbohydrates.
Yes, sir.
So I cannot change. Okay. I cannot change it into a protease. Not necessary. Not possible. Okay. Even among the proteases. Okay. I cannot change the name of trypsin. Trypsin has to be trypsin, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
So why do you want to change? If you
It
are
is not
talking about
necessary to change, no?
it is not necessary. Why do you want to
Like
change? The name is a name.
like that.
Name
Sir,
is a name.
whatever you said, na? Yes, sir. Whatever you said, na? That layman is not understand that
Look,
amylase,
look.
cellulase term.
My name is Kollegala Sharma. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you
Yes,
understand
sir.
what is Kollegala? What is Sharma? No. You just
No, sir.
identify me with this name, right? Kollegala Sharma
Yes,
is a
sir.
person with a gray hair and a specs. Right?
Yes, sir.
That's what
Yes,
you
sir.
identify. So you identify an enzyme with its action. You give it
Yes,
a
sir.
name. So the essential thing for a person to know is not the name. The essential thing for a person to know is what does trypsin do? Trypsin digests specific proteins. And what are those proteins? That's what he needs to understand. And that is what we have to tell him. That is what communicating. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Not that
Yes, sir.
we need to tell him and make him understand or remember only trypsin. We need to make him understand what does trypsin do.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You got my
Okay, sir.
point?
Thank you, sir.
That's it.
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Kanksha, are you there?
Yes. Hi.
Hi. Could you please ask me a question?
Yes. Am I audible right now?
Yes, you are.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. So I have two-part questions. I think first part has already been answered, but I'll just put the background to it, and a very small part of it I think would need a little explanation. So my research mostly has mathematical modeling of physiological systems presently. So while writing for popular story, I understand that the modeling part can be explained via analogy, some kind of part, because mathematics we cannot easily explain to the audience, right? But
Exactly.
the physiological implication of the finding is very easy to put up. So in those cases, what happens is that while writing, I realized that the technicality, because primary part of the research was developing the model itself, right? So that part kind of misses out when you are trying to explain the analogy. So how important is it to explain how we came up with that? And finally, the physiological implications, because physiological implications can be just, as you said, incremental, right? Something that is already known, but we are providing now proofs, complete, proofs for it, that it has been proven now. So how do we put that point across when we are writing in popular science? Yeah.
Okay. Let me just say this. Okay. One is you have a mathematical modeling that is related to some physiological process, right?
Yes.
And the physiological process is already known.
Yes.
Okay. And you are only developing a mathematical model to see if you can predict what happens to this.
Yes.
Okay. Similar things can also happen in several other things.
Yes.
Okay. Like for example, when you cook rice, okay, you have an easy recipe of 2 plus 2 cups of rice and 2 cups of water and cook for so many hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Now suppose we change that to 2 tons of rice and 2 tons of water. Will we need the
Yes.
same time? Is the question that I ask. Okay. This is answered using mathematical modeling.
Yeah.
There are 2 ways of doing. So you can always explain to people using these kind of analogies or these kind of things to say that, okay, there are certain questions about which answers we cannot find out by trial and error method, in which case we use mathematical modeling.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. And the mathematical modeling can be different because some people assume there are certain factors which are affecting, and some people assume there can be different factors. Correct?
Yes.
So therefore,
Yes.
your variables are different, and therefore your modeling is different.
Okay.
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 I have explained. Now you change, you fill in your
Yes.
questions. Done.
Yes, sir.
What is difficult about this?
Thank you so much. I think you really simplified it. So my part,
I have not
part
simplified. I have only communicated what you are doing. So like I said, we have to decide what we need to tell. Okay.
Okay.
And for us scientists, every small aspect is very important. But that is only when we do the science. Okay. But it is not necessary that all that part has to be communicated, all that part has to be in the story. They can be in a different way communicated also. So that is the whole thing about communication.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. That helped a lot. So the second question that I had was regarding Tyagi sir's very fascinating spinach story and how well it was put. So I'm not very aware about the formatting of science communication. So my perception of that was that it was written in a science reporting format. But does that also qualify for the popular science story writing format that we are presently working towards in AWSAR? So the science reporting format, is it different from popular science story writing format?
Yes. Reporting can actually, reporting is basically in a format of progress report, where you are have a timeline, and within that what you have done. But when you are writing an article or story, that is a complete actually in itself. There is a head and tail to that also, which may not be in the reporting. Okay, so we want like it to the extent it can be made more comprehensive, self-explanatory, rather than giving the supplementary and all that. So it should be done in that way, because in fact that is a problem with most of the cases. Those who has not come into the first round, this was the format, the reporting, not a journalistic reporting, but reporting to your authority what you have done as a progress report of your research, which you are submitting periodically. And same format has been used for writing, for sending the story to AWSAR. So that's why we found most of them were, half-hearted attempt in a way. It's not conveying anything, except that if until unless I'm linking your previous progress report with this report, then only I can make a sense out of that. Okay, so make it complete, comprehensive, and self-explanatory. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Vyoma. How many of them has left? Nikita.
Yes. Good afternoon, sir. Hello. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes. So my question is, for in case we do not want to reveal the entire results, or maybe we do not want to cite the exact
slow,
or
bit slow,
a bit slow. You're too
Nikita,
fast.
You're too fast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
And bit louder.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my question is, in case if we do not want to cite our exact or definite results, so can we just give like a brief idea of our research? Will that do, or the mentioning of the results is mandatory?
Like, what is the inhibition of not writing about the result or final outcome? Because you
There
said
is
your
no such
paper is
inhibition.
not yet published. Huh?
Yeah, that is not a problem, sir. Yeah, obviously it's not yet published. But the format in which I have chosen, it's more of a generalized way. So explaining it and giving it, I would like to avoid it. So mentioning it, is it mandatory? Then of course I will be including it.
No, the thing is, what is the purpose of your writing? Now,
Of
if you
course,
don't want to talk about
explaining
your
it.
research or about the result, then what is the purpose of writing? Number one.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Number
sir.
two is, whatever is the format, okay, your result
Yes,
doesn't
sir.
change, right?
Yes,
So the
yes,
format
absolutely.
the format that you choose, whether it is a story, whether it is a fiction, whether it is a poem or anything, it doesn't affect your result, right? So the
Yes, yes,
result is the same.
absolutely.
So you will have to talk only about your result using all the any format that is required. So there are only
Okay.
two things, I guess, that stops you from talking about your research. One is that you don't have any specific research result, right? That itself is a result. There is
Okay.
no specific result as of now, okay?
Yes,
And therefore
yes.
there are questions whether this is true or that is true. Isn't that the conclusion that you have come to
Yes, sir,
after
I
your?
agree. I agree.
So that's one. Or you don't want to talk about your research because you want to hide it, in which case
No,
you
sir, I would
don't
like to
talk
go with
at
the first
all.
case.
Okay,
Okay.
so that's it.
Yes,
So
sir.
even if the result is inconclusive research is a result is also an indicator, is also a final result that you have at present. Okay, that raises more questions, either about the course of the next research that has to be taken, or about the kind of understanding we had previously about that. Okay, it could be wrong. The previous understanding could have been wrong, or previous understanding is correct, and your questioning that was wrong. Okay, both can happen.
Yes.
So therefore, inconclusive result or a failure of to get a result doesn't mean that you don't talk about your research. Please talk about that. Okay, and in any format it can be talked about.
Yes, sir, I got it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, Atri Sarkar.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Sir, actually, my research has an aspect which is like non-GMO, which does not involve any like genetically modified organism or GM technology. So basically, it is one of the parts of my PhD, and the other part involves the genetic modification. So I'm not like in particular for or against the technology, but is it from the perspective of a science communicator and keeping in mind the current situation in India about genetic, like the idea common people have about genetic GMOs or the technology? Is it wise to write it as a non-GMO approach, or can I skip that part? Because just from the perspective of the science communicator.
See,
What right?
Yeah, here the question is, what is the government policy? It is pro or against that?
Sir, as like till date in India, the government right now is kind of more optimistic about the use of the technology, but they have not yet like very explicitly said yes. There are a few instances where like the genetically modified mustard and like very scarce incidences where they have actually made it till the market, and they have been passed through the government without any concern. So right now, I don't think it is like we are in a good position to say whether the government is absolutely for or against. So like regarding that is exactly why my question is that how should I present it as a
Now,
non-GMO technology?
Now, why do you want to present it as a GMO technology or non-GMO technology? You plainly have to present it as a science. Okay, this was a question that I have in my mind, and we wanted an answer for that. This is what we have done, and this is the answer that we have got. Isn't that simple?
Okay, sir.
What you are saying is the activist approach, actually.
Yeah.
Whether it is a pro or against, when you write, it is an activist approach. We are science communicator. We are telling the state of art. Government is already funding that research, and you have to give that optimism what this technology is offering.
Now, to extend further, okay. The thing is, in science communication, there are two things. Yes, of course, you will have to evaluate sometimes and give your value judgment, but that is not always necessary. So without giving a value
government
judgment,
is and government is for it.
Whatever it is, Tyagi. So we need not give a value judgment about the research or the result that you have obtained. You can always explain that, okay, that as a question that was there, and there are several tools to answer, and you have used these tools. In some of them you got an answer, in some of them you have not got an answer, or in all of them you have got similar answers. All these are good to explain, and that's all you have to do. And what is done later is different. So say in the same example analogies that we use, a matchstick is prepared. So a matchstick is prepared by using either a plastic holder or a plastic stick or another stick, but it does the same thing. Okay, so now what you are trying to do is, since we do not have these kind of things, we are using a plastic. Okay, we do not have wood, we have used plastic. So you can always say that instead of using genetically modified or other, see these questions about food habits, about different types of nutrition that is available in the food, when things like this affect us, including the COVID vaccine, the questions will be raised by public. Okay, as science communicators, we need to only talk about, if I am talking about RNA vaccine, how does RNA vaccine work? If I'm talking about inactivated virus vaccine, I will only talk about how inactivated virus vaccine is produced and used and how does it affect our body. I do not compare RNA vaccine with this. That is not for me. That is for the government or the other agencies to do. Similarly, here also, you talk about only about non-GMO part you have done separately and GMO part you have done separately. Why do you want to compare this with that and give a value judgment?
Yeah.
Are you sure that you think that GMO is the way to go or GMO is not the way to go? What is your this one? So you are not sure. So why do you want? Why do you want to make the people also get this one? So simply talk about your research, what results you have got, what conclusions that has led to that, led you to that. That's it.
Okay, so here I need not put my like the, as it was mentioned before, the economic or the social or even political in an like extrapolations of the research I'm
If
doing.
you have a specific instance of somebody questioning your this one and saying that this is wrong, you can always mention, or you can, somebody has said or certified that this can be used, that can be done. Definitely. But if that is not there, if there is no definitive thing like that is not there, you can always stop at that. This is the result that we have got. We need to do or we need to see where it goes. Give an open-ended question. Doesn't matter.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So we have another query. Sangamitra, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Sir, actually, I have a doubt. In physical science, for engagement of audience, if I start with my story that I have initially in my childhood, I have a doubt, and I correlate some circumstances. Then during my research work, I got that result. Is it acceptable?
Anything is acceptable till it is making an engrossing and engaging story.
Yes.
Okay.
But in
Yeah.
that presentation, sir, you told it is a self-glorifying. It should not be self-glorifying. It is
It
just for
depends how you
engagement of
start.
audience. Yes, sorry, sir.
No. If see what I told, it was because many things they were mentioned out of context.
Okay.
They were telling the story how they came into research, not how they are doing what research they are doing. Okay. So
Okay.
that means it is a personal glorification. Yeah.
Okay, sir. But for
It is not
engaging
about the
audience,
research, but about themselves.
Okay.
That's why I'm saying it depends. You are the judge yourself whether it is a necessary component of the storytelling or it is unnecessary. That you decide.
Secondly, yes, yeah, there's one way out for this. Okay, you got a question, and is that a common question that every child gets? Then put every child there. Why only Sangamitra?
Yes.
Then
Yes.
what happens is that, see, during childhood, we would have wondered about the rainbow. Why does it have 7 colors? Does it really have 7 colors or more? Now you're talking about then you can take it to your further research on optics or whatever it is. So instead, if you say that if only Sangamitra had got that doubt, then it is not an engaging technique. It's not an engaging technique. So you will have to find a thing from your childhood which generally attracts everybody. Okay,
Yes.
like I said, it should be as common as possible. Then engagement is easier. If it is personal, the engagement is will not happen. It will be only your personal viewpoint and not an engagement technique.
Yes.
And
Thank you,
like
sir.
Tyagi said, it will be glorification.
Yes. Yes, sir. Understood.
So we will take one last question, and the rest of the
Yes.
questions can be addressed via connect.afsar@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Because I need to give them the instructions regarding the resubmission too. So
Okay.
Charu, could you please address your question?
Hello,
Yes, Charu.
ma'am. Am I
Yeah.
audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes. Well.
Sir, I'm really sorry. I've already asked my question, but due to some breaking technical audible issues, I was unable to listen to my answers given by you. So, sir, my question is only ki, how could I conclude my AWSAR story if my research is still in ongoing mode and yet to have some final outcome findings to come?
We have answered this question earlier also.
Yes, sir, but आपकी आवाज मतलब technical audible issues हो रहे थे तो
Yeah, it's just that, see, since you do not have a conclusive evidence,
yes,
okay, what are you going to do further?
Yes, sir.
Tell that.
Okay. Fine.
Are you going to ask other questions and continue research? And if so, what kind of research that has to be done? Okay. Or are you going to stop this research because it says that your earlier assumption was wrong? So whatever, see, you started with a question, questioning something that was already there, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when you have no conclusive evidence and you think that whatever you had earlier understanding or your doubts, okay, are not clear. So therefore, you can always stop that. So both ways. As we discussed, inconclusive research doesn't mean that they should not be talked about. They can be talked about also. So what we are discussing here is whether it is conclusive research or inconclusive research, whether it is physics or biology, whether it is a fundamental research or an applied aspect. How do we communicate it to the people? It has to be done in simple ways.
15th Jan लिखना है पर ये PDF है.
So you will have to follow 3 principles. Number 1, you understand the audience, their language, what language you should use to talk to them, what kind of the level of understanding they have, over which if you understand that, you can build over which, or you will have to give that minimum understanding and then go. And lastly, you have to communicate it in such a way that if it is a concept, abstract concept, the tools that you have to use, like analogies, similes, and examples. So these kind of tools, what kind of tool that you have to use. So these are the kind of things that you need to think about and do. And with regard to the comments that we have, that Dr. Tyagi has already given the shortcomings of all the essays that we evaluated in the AWSAR competition. So keep that in mind, because you have to redo your rewrite your stories and then submit it again. So think of all these points, look at that, then clarify, right?
Sir, one more last question. Sir, inconclusive result अगर हमारे inconclusive research है अगर हमारी, तो उसकी अवसर स्टोरी में कोई नेगेटिव मतलब उसका तो कैलकुलेशन नहीं होगा.
We have time and again said that AWSAR stories are evaluated for their communicative abilities and the content. What result you get, whether that result is positive or negative, is not the criteria.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Can I ask my question? I was not audible that time. Hello.
Yes, I think this is the last question. Please.
Yes, good afternoon, sir. I wanted to ask, can we use smaller names, nickname, like it is Salmonella typhimurium? So writing again and again, or for a virus name, like it is a big virus name, Bhindi yellow vein mosaic virus. So can we use BIMO for the same, like we can mention that I'm giving a nickname and then use it further?
You can do that.
You can do that.
You can do that. Yeah.
There are 2 things about this kind of usages. One is the scientists are always very familiar of this usage of using acronyms, okay, or abbreviations. Okay, there are 2 types of abbreviations. One is, of course, the universal abbreviations. So DNA is easily understandable to everyone because DNA is universally used. But there are certain cases where you use only in that particular instant or context. Okay, say Salmonella typhimurium, usually we use typhi. Okay, so generally we give the particular name and say that typhi bacteria or something like that. You can always say, which we call typhi, and then you continue with that. There's no harm in using that. But in case in the same story, if you want to refer to salmonella, another species of salmonella, then you may run into problem. So you will have to keep that also in mind and do that. Okay.
Okay, sir. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Vyoma, now I think Gaurav has to take it up.
Yes, sir. I'm taking further from here. So I will brief them regarding the instructions for resubmission.
Yes, I think for resubmission is that they can entirely revise their story. They can rewrite that story. It's not necessary. They can do some editing or some change in the existing story. They can write altogether a new story using a different format.
So I'm walking them through the process through AWSAR website. So you all are supposed to submit your story on or before 15th of January 2023. And if you fail to resubmit your story within the stipulated time, then your previous story will be considered. And this is how you have to resubmit your story. The link will be active after the workshop. You have to log into your
Vyoma,
dashboard.
your audio is cracky.
Okay, is it better now, sir? Am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you will get these guidelines, these instructions in your mail inbox. But I'm walking you through this dashboard. Once you log into your AWSAR dashboard, you have to click here to resubmit your story. This link will be active once this workshop will be over. And then this page will open up. This is your personalized page. Here you can see the previous uploaded story. Once you scroll down, then you will be prompted with the question that you need to resubmit your manuscript. If you opt for yes, then you have to select this option and upload your revised manuscript. And if you will fail to submit so, your previous story will be considered for the evaluation. Thank you. And these instructions will be mailed to you along with the YouTube link of today's interaction workshop. Thank you. Just remember the last date for story submission is 15 January 2023. Okay. Thank you, sir. And can we...
So you are sending a personalized mail to all this?
Yes. Yes, I will be sending the personalized mail to all the participants.
So do it today because the time is very short. They should it
Yes,
should not
sir.
be to the disadvantage of our participants. Huh? Send it today
They will
itself.
receive it by today. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
They will. Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
So should we call it a day?
Yes, sir. Please
Can
conclude the
we? Can you
meeting.
come? Can you be out from your screen sharing? Okay, friends, I think thank you very much for participating in this webinar, and I would like to thank our director, Sir Dr. Nakul Parashar and Kollegala Sharma ji for giving us so much, input and valuable comments and direction and guidelines on writing, those popular story on a and thank you, Kollegala ji, for I mean, especially for satisfying the queries of our participant, because there were many technical things which was not in my subject area, but you handled them so nicely. Thank you very much. And once again, I would like to thank all the participants, and with a word of caution that the last date for submitting the revised story is 15 January, 12 p.m. Sorry, AM. So don't miss that deadline. And based on today's discussion, try to revise your popular story. And the time is very short, and your time starts now. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear, all of you, and best of luck.